The following videos are a compilation of all the Mario and Luigi games that I made a video on. So as soon as we ever get to like the 7th Mario and Luigi games, here's a video on every single Mario and Luigi game that's been ever released. The early 2000s were filled to the brim with Mario RPG games. After the big cultural impact of Super Mario RPG in 1996, the game was able to have several successors over the years, starting with the N64 with the Paper Mario series, which is still getting releases to this very day, but in 2003, a really small studio decided to take a crack of another Mario RPG successor, and thus the Mario and Luigi series was born. But here's an interesting fact. Unlike Paper Mario, where it's made by completely different developers, the developers behind the Mario and Luigi series were people who used to work on Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. Now, if you're not very familiar with the Mario and Luigi series, well, it's a series where you control both Mario and Luigi as they go across these vast different worlds, with each of the brothers being controlled by one designated button. It does some things very similar to the other Mario RPG series, but it does something very unique to really stand apart. And I've always considered Mario and Luigi as the best Mario RPG series because it always had a great consistent quality to them. But unfortunately, a few years ago, the original studio that made the series closed down after filing for bankruptcy, causing the whole series to go into a weird limbo state for a few years, until now, by some miracle, a brand new Mario and Luigi entry was just announced. So I thought it'd be fun just to finally talk about this series, since this was the Mario RPG games I grew up with. So I think for the rest of the year, I'm going to go through the entire Mario and Luigi series, ending things off with the release of Mario and Luigi Brothership. So I feel like it's appropriate to talk about the very first one that started it all, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Now, this is considered one of the most acclaimed Mario RPG games, since it set up a lot of groundworks for a lot of things like gameplay, style, and characters, with the last part introducing so many memorable characters that people still talk about to this very day. Now, for me personally, I had this game since I was a kid, as I owned a couple of GBA games, and I was able to play it thanks to my DS Lite, and while my first ever Mario & Luigi game was Bowser's Inside Story, I was able to snag this game alongside with partners in time, and I thought it was a pretty good time. But it's been a while since I've played these two games. With Superstar's case, the last time I've played it was with the 3DS remake. But for this video, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the GBA version, but I'm going to be using footage of the 3DS remake as well, since they're pretty much the same game. And as for the GBA version, I'm going to be recording it based on the NSO version, and I've got to say, it's kind of weird playing a Mario & Luigi game on a big screen TV like this. And I'll be probably saying this again when we see the series' first console entry this fall. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story of this game is that an ambassador from the Bean Bean Kingdom arrives at the Mushroom Kingdom to give Peach a gift. It was supposedly a gift for the queen, but it turns out it was a trick by this evil witch named Cackletta and her assistant Fawful, who was able to shoot this poisonous gas at Peach and suck it back up, leaving the poor girl unconscious, with the devious duo escaping from parts unknown with the kingdom in panic, with a local Toad rushing to Mario's house to get help. Unfortunately, he came in at an inconvenient time as Mario was taking a shower. Toad warns him that Peach is in trouble, and so Mario rushes all the way outside to get his clothes, while dragging Luigi across through the entire kingdom. But as soon as they arrive, Bowser shows up ready to capture the princess, but after a quick fight, it was immediately halted once they figure out what's going on with Peach. So it turns out that the machine Fawful used on Peach stole her voice and replaced it with literal bombs, as every time she even speaks, it caused an explosion. Bowser realizes because of Peach's condition, he is unable to kidnap her because she'll most likely blow up his castle. And so he decided to have a truce with Mario to head to the Bean Bean Kingdom to find Cackletta. Luckily, Bowser is fully prepared with an entire airship and fleet, while Mario brings Luigi along much to his dismay. However, later that night on Bowser's airship, they were attacked by Fawful, who destroys the entire fleet, causing the trio to crash land. But luckily they weren't too far of their location, so after a few scuffles, they successfully arrive at the Bean Bean Kingdom, although Bowser wasn't very lucky. Eventually, after rescuing the prince of the kingdom on top of the mountain, they arrived at the center of the town, where it's revealed that Cackletta has caused so much trouble at the kingdom, as she was able to steal their legendary Beanstar and mutate their queen into this hulking beast. And so, it's up to Mario and Luigi to go after Cackletta and save the kingdom. Now, the premise of this game is pretty solid since we're not in the Mushroom Kingdom anymore. That means we get to meet more original and weird characters along the way. With some of them, you're meeting more red and green duos who teach Mario and Luigi certain tricks, while others can be considered one of the most iconic characters in Mario history, like the villain Fawful. And I really adored this guy with his big grin and how he speaks in this hilariously broken English way. His dialogue single-handedly makes him very recognizable. Like his iconic catchphrase, "I have fury!" Pablo is another very funny character I really like, as he's this short-tempered burglar that the brothers encounter occasionally, who most of the time argues with his partner that happens to be Bowser, who's suffering from amnesia. And so he does not recognize the Mario Brothers. And then there's Prince Peasley, who's essentially the hero of the Bean Bean Kingdom and a goodwill person. They also play a somewhat friendly rivalry with the Mario Brothers in this game, as every time they're in a predicament, Peasley will claim that he's the one who solved it first, only for the Mario Brothers to beat them to the punch. But I feel like the biggest highlight for this character is every time he plays off with Luigi, who really seems to idolize the prince in this game to the point where it just straight up feeling homoerotic. I think the part that really made me laugh when Peasley declared a bet with Mario Brothers, and then he immediately starts poking Luigi's rear with a sword, and he's really into it. If I can describe Superstar Saga's story as one thing, it is definitely a comedy, as the game doesn't really take itself seriously and have an overly in-depth story, but instead tries to be really funny, and I'll give them credit that a lot of the jokes in this game do work really well. And I especially love the slapstick comedy that they do with Luigi in this game. This Green Man is basically the definition of a comic relief character, as his cowardly persona that was introduced in Luigi's Mansion worked wonderfully in this game. And I think the funniest gag in this game is that since Luigi doesn't go on many adventures compared to Mario, he's really not well recognized in different kingdoms. Hell, even Bowser can't even remember his name, which is honestly hilariously sad for Luigi. Like, before they were able to head out to the Bean Bean Kingdom, Bowser thought Luigi wanted to sign up to the Koopa Kingdom. But my favorite joke in this game is surprisingly a joke about exchange rates, where Peasley waged 900 billion coins for Mario and Luigi to wager, and once he actually gave him the 90 billion Mushroom Kingdom coins, it turns out that in Bean Bean Kingdom, it's only worth 99. That is hilarious. Alright, so as for the gameplay in Superstar Saga, as I mentioned before, it is another spiritual successor to Super Mario RPG. But unlike that and Paper Mario, this game tries to do something way more unique, which is that instead of having a big cast of party members from Gino and Mallow to Vivian and Goombella, in this game you have only 2 party members, which are the titular brothers, with their movements being pretty much identical from each other, with each of them having their own button with the 2 GBA face buttons, with Mario having the A button and Luigi having the B button, although for this game specifically you can change the order of the brothers. And as for the controls, while Mario and Luigi can do a lot of different things in this game, of course you can have the 2 brothers jump and use their trademark hammers, but also they can work together to do unique abilities, like Luigi being able to do a high jump which allows them to get to higher places. But if you swap around with the brothers with Mario in the back, he is able to do a small little spin jump which allows the brothers to hover in the air for a bit. This even goes with the hammers as well, as if you have Luigi behind you, he can use his hammer to turn Mario into Mini Mario, which allows him to travel through small places. And if Mario is behind, he can whack Luigi on the ground, which allows him to sneak through grates, or he's able to find these elusive beans. Now these things are freaking everywhere in this game, which makes sense as you're traveling through the Bean Bean Kingdom. But unlike something like mushrooms where they heal you, you take the beans that you collect along the way to this place called the Star Beans Cafe, and use them to make coffee, the most important drink in the kingdom, which allows you to raise certain stats depending on the drink that you've made. But also every time you brew in a new drink, you also get to meet with the owner of the cafe, which is Professor Egad, who's taken up shop in the Bean Bean Kingdom, with the coffee maker being his latest invention, and every time he shows up it's usually a funny encounter, with a lot of great callbacks to Luigi's Mansion, like the occasional ghost showing up to scare Luigi. There was even a friendly ghost to show up to try out the new coffee, and it was so good that the ghost just went to heaven. And I also love the GBA remix of the Luigi's Mansion theme. That's a really nice touch. But I think what was very interesting about this section that people talk about is what the original plan was for the cafe. As originally you were able to encounter other Nintendo characters like Olimar, Fox, and Link that will be able to give you various rewards. But even though they were cut, you can still see remnants of this original idea in the final game, which are the rewards themselves that Egad gives you after giving him a delicious, hot, refreshing... Okay, sorry about that. Now, as for the various areas of the Bean Bean Kingdom themselves, a lot of them do have their unique biomes. I like how the entirety of the kingdom is pretty much one big circle, with the main center point being the town itself. And each of the areas hold unique NPCs that are pretty much distinct to that area. Same with the various enemies you'll find along the way, which leads to us to the game's battle system. Now for the combat in this game, it's the same turn-based battles you would see in other Mario RPG games, with Mario using his usual attacks like the jump and hammers, but what sets this game apart from the others is, for one, the characters do these little dances. Since this game is about Mario and Luigi working together, this leads to their special attacks having you do these quick QTEs to deal massive damage to enemies. And I like how each of the brothers have unique movesets to set them apart, which based on their special abilities. Like Luigi being able to turn Mario into Mini Mario in the overworld, and this was translated really well as a move to attack enemies. But what's interesting is that if you use these special moves a certain amount of times, the Mario Brothers will learn an advanced version of them, which is pretty much a harder but more powerful version of the similar bro attack. But as for when the enemy is attacked themselves, instead of just blocking them like in Paper Mario, you're actually able to dodge their attacks by either jumping or using your hammer to counterattack. And with this, I personally prefer the Mario and Luigi battle system over the Paper Mario one, as since there are so many different enemies in this game, a lot of them have their unique attacks, which always keeps you on your toes. Especially with the various bosses in this game, which can be very damn difficult at times. But man, nothing feels more satisfying as doing that final blow and see them explode with all these stars around. The only big criticism I have with this battle system is that since this is the first game of the series, so it's pretty much first game syndrome, this is probably one of the easier Mario and Luigi games. As since the bro attacks deal a lot of damage, there's nothing stopping you of using it for regular enemies. Of course, since it's a special attack, they do have a magic meter, aka the bro points. But at the very most, you're only going to be spending 3 bro points just for one of these special attacks. And since this is an RPG and you level up a lot of your stats, that means at the near end you'll have so many bro points that you might as well just use the special attacks. And this is why I kinda lean more favorably with the 3DS remake, as this version gives you a better challenge with the bosses and enemies, by raising the requirements of the bro points for each of the move. And for the boss's case, if you deplete their health halfway, they'll enter this little rage mode, where they'll introduce brand new attacks, which honestly caught me off guard. But I think my favorite battles in this game is really the viruses from Dr. Mario, where they have this thing, if you match all the viruses' colors together, they'll immediately die. That is honestly a really cool detail, I really love that. Alright, so continuing on with the story. After figuring out a cure for the Queen's condition, she explains to the brothers about the legendary Beanstar, as it's a sleeping entity that is able to grant wishes, but in order to wake it up, you need to have a voice of beauty. Which is why Cackletta stole Peach's voice in the first place, so she can wake up the star. But luckily they were able to figure out Cackletta's whereabouts with the Beanstar, and Mario and Luigi heads deep into Hoo Hoo University, where the evil witch is ready to use Peach's voice to power up the star, but suddenly it reacts negatively to Peach's voice. And while Cackletta was distracted, the Mario Brothers were able to ambush her, and was nearly successful at taking her out until Fawful comes in and absorbs her energy, leaving her into this ghostly state. And then Peasley shows up to pretty much finish them off. And so, without Cackletta, the Mario Brothers then rush all the way down to the basement where they are able to find Pobble and Bowser taking the star. And after one battle against them, the Beanstar starts becoming enraged and flies up in the sky, with the Mario Brothers and burglars latching onto them where they all fall down to the kingdom. Ironically, right after Bowser realizes who he really is. And so they all fall down and the starbeam then scatters across the land. After finding their way off this deserted island, they were able to head back to the Bean Bean Kingdom, where they heard the news by Peasley that Princess Peach is coming to the kingdom to visit them. And since Cackletta is pretty much gone, they pretty much had nothing to worry about. But little did they know, things are going to get a lot worse from here. So after fixing up some issues at the airport, Peach finally arrives at the Bean Bean Kingdom, where it's revealed that this entire time, Peach's voice was never stolen in the first place. As Peasley knew that Cackletta was going after Peach, so he warned her. And the voice that Cackletta stole turns out to be Birdo in disguise, which explains why the Beanstar reacted negatively. Hey, I'm currently recording this while I'm editing, and I just realized something. If Toadsworth knew that Peach's voice was never stolen, why didn't he just stop Mario before he head out to the Bean Bean Kingdom? It's not that much big of a deal, but I just thought it was a weird plot hole. And so while Prince Peasley tries to find the remains of the Beanstar, the Mario Brothers and Peach decide to visit a little fungi town, which is pretty much a home away from home as it's a small toad town. So after going through this short escort mission to prevent Peach getting kidnapped, they were able to visit a town where they pretty much just chillax and just play around. Oh hey Gino. But unfortunately for Mario's case, he got food poisoning, as since he's not used to eating foods from a different kingdom, he's essentially going to be turned into a literal bean if Luigi doesn't find a cure for him. But as soon as he was able to find it, things got even more dire when Peach gets kidnapped. But not from Bowser, but Bowletta, who states that she'll return Princess Peach to the Mario Brothers if they were able to collect the Beanstar. And this leads to the second half of Superstar Saga. With the first half, it's kind of linear where you need to go, but after you learn the final main move the Mario Brothers can do, which is Elemental, this is when the game truly opens up, as not only you have a bit more movesets for Mario and Luigi to tackle with, but you can really explore the Bean Bean Kingdom with any way you want. It's recommended to do one of these missions first, but after that you can choose any order you want, which is pretty cool. Although besides the first one you're recommended doing so, find the bean pieces here are surprisingly really easy to do, as one of them is pretty much you going around in circles to find these special fruits to feed to the Yoshis. That way they can lay special neon legs for the theater. And for another one, you're just straight up playing this small little minigame. Which reminds me, there are a lot of minigames you can play through in this game, and you can replay harder versions of the same ones you play through for special prizes, which are really rare to find beans. And you get to see where Donkey Kong has been for the last 10 years. You doing okay, Donkey Kong? Are you okay? Now, as for the visuals in this game looks really good for the GBA. I really adore the bright colors and rounded art style this game is going for. It makes all the characters feel pop and they're very damn expressive. One of the strongest aspects I can think of with Alpha Dream games is their strong art style and sprite animations. And I've got to say, Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga has some of the best looking sprites in any Mario game period. Like, I'm not kidding, I feel like the sprites in Superstar Saga are about as iconic as Mario Bros. 3 and World. Especially if you're growing up on the internet in the early 2000s when sprite animations were all the rage. And you see them always using the Mario and Luigi sprites just because how expressive these character sprites are. And even the smaller details I really adore, like every time you win a battle, the victory pose you have will depend on your final blow. So if you defeat the last enemy with a hammer attack, they'll wield out their hammers in the victory pose. And the music in this game is just straight up phenomenal, honestly one of the best GBA soundtracks. Yoko Shimomura did wonders in making the soundtrack come to life. And I feel like most of this has been translated really well for the 3DS remake. And I've got to say, as someone who played the GBA version first and then the 3DS remake after, I've got to say is that they really pretty much recaptured the magic of the original game. Some people say that the 3DS version isn't as expressive as the original game, and I can say that somewhat with Mario and Luigi themselves, but as for the original characters for this remake, I'd say they're about as, if not more expressive and even more animated than the original. Especially with characters like Bowser, which this might be a bit of a hot take, but I never was a big fan of his original sprite in Superstar Saga, as it always looked a bit off to me as he looked more like a gremlin more than Bowser himself. But what really sells me on the 3DS remake's graphics has to be the environments themselves, as I really adore the colors and shimmering that they have in the remake. It looked very mesmerizing, especially with places like Stardust Fields. And the remix soundtrack in this game is honestly out of this world, as some of the most recognized soundtracks in this game has been translated beautifully with new hardware. With my favorite soundtrack being the Welcome to the Bean Bean Kingdom theme, as it just feels very magical. They even improved certain soundtracks that I didn't really like too much, like the ones that try to be a bit more ambient, which ends up being grating in the long run. If you have a Nintendo 3DS, then I highly recommend trying out this remake because it is a wonderful package. And at the time, it was really cool to play every single Mario and Luigi game on one console. But even though I prefer the 3DS version a bit more, I still recommend trying out the GBA version, especially since that one's a lot more accessible. with the only down points I can think of with the remake is the brand new side game that they included in this, where its focus is mostly on Bowser's minions trying to find their master, with the main protagonist of this game being this one Goomba. And honestly, it works really well because considering the fact that Goombas are usually the weakest Mario enemy, that ideology is represented in the story with the Goombas being pretty much the lower class. So it's basically this one Goomba trying to show himself what they can do. Which that means is that I can technically say that a Goomba got his own game before Waluigi ever did. That's honestly kind of hilarious. And as for the gameplay itself, well, I actually don't know what it is. The battle system is way different from the usual Mario and Luigi gameplay, where the gameplay is completely automatic where two sides of the team battle out to see who can win. Which isn't a bad idea on paper, but in execution, I thought this was one of the worst battle systems I ever played in a Mario game. This feels like something you would see in a really lackluster Paper Mario game. But despite that, I don't think this one new mode really tampers the remake itself, as it's still just an optional side game, you can just completely ignore it. As the actual remake itself, at the end of the day, is still Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, except it looks nicer and has a lot of refinements from the modern games. Alright, so with everything out of the way, I think it's appropriate to wrap up this adventure. So after getting all the 4 pieces of the Beanstar and putting them back together, Bowletta sends another letter saying to meet her at the Ice Palace called Joke's End. That way they can trade Peach with the Beanstar, but they know how dangerous the Beanstar would be, so instead of just straight up giving her, they decide to make a decoy to trick her into trading Peach. So after heading to the palace and dealing with the owner, they were ready to give Fawful the red herring, but he was able to see through the disguise and steals the actual Beanstar from Luigi. So now that Bowletta has the Beanstar, Mario needs to figure out a plan to get it back as well as Peach. And so when they were able to confront Bowletta and demand to return Peach, of course she wouldn't do her end of the deal and decides to keep Peach. But then another Peach shows up saying the one that Bowletta kidnapped was a fake. And enraged, Bowletta then discards the quote-unquote fake Peach and tries to kidnap the real one. Only to realize once they're up in the sky that they've been duped and it was Luigi in disguise, who not only tricked the witch, but also was able to steal back the Beanstar and escape unharmed. And with Bowletta so enraged, she decides to head to the Mushroom Kingdom to take the entirety of Bowser's castle. And with that, she pulls out another attack on the Bean Bean Kingdom, destroying the entire place again. And so, with no time to spare, Mario and Luigi then heads up all the way to Bowser's castle to stop Cackletta once and for all. After dealing with the surprisingly at the time returned the Koopalings, and dealing with Fawful once and for all, there's only one thing left and it's taking down Bowletta. So after you defeat the first phase, where Bowletta seems to be defeated, she had one final trick up her sleeve by detonating a bomb near Mario and Luigi, knocking them out cold. And so with them defeated, Bowletta decides to just straight up eat them, by literally just inhaling them and swallowing them whole. And so this leads to the second phase of the final boss, where you defeat Cackletta's ghost itself. And this boss really puts up a fight. I mean, hell, when you start the boss, you only have 1 HP, so you need to dodge their attacks before you can die instantly. And then you need to attack the different body parts so they can expose the weak point. It's pretty damn challenging, but a great way to end this game. And once you deal that final blow, Cackletta is finally defeated. As Bowser restores back to normal and Peasley shows up saying that he has rigged the whole place to blow up. And after rushing all the way back to the start of the area, Mario and Luigi was able to escape from the exploding castle, with Bowser not so very lucky. And with that, the day is saved and peace has restored back to the Bean Bean Kingdom, with Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toadsworth saying farewell to the people there, concluding Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. And overall, after 21 years, this game holds up really well. Even though personally it's not my favorite Mario & Luigi game, I still had a really good time playing through this game. As even though this is a very short RPG game, it was still packed with a lot of memorability, and it pretty much became the blueprints of even bigger Mario & Luigi games over the years. And I'm very excited to see this format introduced in a console entry later this year. If you own a Nintendo Switch, then I highly recommend trying this on the NSO app. as it's the most modern way to play through a lot of classic GBA games. But if you still own a Nintendo 3DS, then I highly recommend trying out the remake. As I said earlier, it's a really well-made remake, and it really captures the original magic of the game. Plus, since the 3DS is backwards compatible, you can essentially play through the entirety of the Mario & Luigi series under one console. But regardless on which version you play, at the very end of the day, Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga is a pretty good game. Wait, is that Mario Brothers on the... Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga was a massive hit during the GBA days, selling over 2 million copies and receiving universal acclaim throughout. And so because of this, a sequel was definitely inbound, releasing only about 2 years after the fact, on Nintendo's newest console at the time, the Nintendo DS. Now with the first game, the main idea is having the two brothers being controlled by the two face buttons. But since the Nintendo DS had 4 face buttons this time, they decided to fully utilize it by Mario & Luigi teaming up with, well, Mario & Luigi. And so for this game, the brothers are going to be teaming up with their baby counterparts for one big adventure. Plus, it fits very naturally because this was around the time when the baby brothers were becoming reoccurring characters in the spin-off games like Mario Kart, Tennis, and such. And so when E3 rolled in 2005 while Nintendo was unveiling the Nintendo Wii, Nintendo then just casually announced the game during a scissor wheel with a placeholder of Mario & Luigi 2. Which, fun fact for those who don't know, in Japan most of the Mario & Luigi games are numbered entries up until Paper Jam, where that and Brothership just have subtitles. But eventually, once the game finally released in 2005, it was fully given the name Mario & Luigi Partners in Time, or Partners in Crime according to the manual. Huh. But as for my personal history with this game, I mentioned in my last video I was able to get this game along with Superstar Saga a few years ago. But how I was able to discover this game was a bit more interesting, as when I was back in like elementary school I think, I was visiting one of my aunt's neighbors. And they allowed me to try out a game on their Nintendo DS, and that was how I was able to discover that Mario & Luigi game. And of course, as I mentioned a few years later, I was able to get it for myself. Now when it comes to the reception of this game, I always saw this as one of the more least popular Mario RPG games. Not because it's bad or anything, but it's more so not a lot of people talk about it that much these days. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, is pretty much a common thing for a lot of DS games. Like, this console had so many great games under its library, but besides something like Pokemon and New Super Mario Brothers, you don't really see people talk about a lot of these games these days. So I'm very curious on how well Partners in Time holds up. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the distant past of the Mushroom Kingdom, with baby Mario and baby Luigi arriving at the castle for a playdate with Peach, where suddenly baby Bowser appears and trying to kidnap her. Even as a little toddler, Bowser had an unhealthy obsession with Peach. But it didn't take very long for baby Mario to knock some sense out of baby Bowser, but then suddenly the unexpected happens when up in the sky, a herd of flying saucers attack the kingdom, with the group escaping through Bowser's Koopa Cruise. Meanwhile, jumping all the way up to present day, Professor Egad unveils his latest invention, which is a time machine that is powered by this magical artifact called the Cobalt Star. And so, Princess Peach alongside with other Toads decide to take a small trip with the time machine for a blast to the past. Much to Toadsworth's dismay because he's extremely worried about Peach going on this trip, to the point where he just straight up passed out. But after Mario was able to recover him with a special mushroom, the time machine then returns back to the present day, but in a really broken state. Where instead of Peach being inside of it, it is this monster that Mario is able to take him out no problem. But despite that, Peach is still missing, with the only clue of her whereabouts is being outside in the garden. As the time machine, I guess as a side effect, created a small little time hole that could show where Peach landed. With the brothers testing that idea immediately when Luigi accidentally falls into the thing, with Mario following after, where they were able to travel through time and space into the past of the Mushroom Kingdom and landed in the outskirts of Holly Jolly Village. With Egad throwing one more thing for the Mario Brothers, which is this sentient suitcase called Stuffwell, who is pretty much your guide throughout the adventure. And they are definitely going to need the help they could get, because it turns out that Peach's destination landed during the worst timing imaginable, as the entire kingdom is under attack by an alien invasion. As the moment the Mario Brothers arrive at the nearby village, all of the Toads are being abducted by aliens. The brothers tried to intervene but got their asses blasted by a nearby explosion, knocking them out unconscious. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Bowser is taking everyone to his castle as shelter from the alien invasion, But while they were flying above the holiday village, they decided to make a quick pit stop where the babies were able to rescue the brothers. But after they went back into their destination, they immediately got shot down by a missile by the leader of the Shroobs. And after a small little scuffle, the Mario Brothers were able to meet up with their baby counterparts, where they decided for the time being to team up with each other to stop this alien invasion. And after traveling throughout Bowser's castle, they were able to meet up with the younger Toadsworth and Peach, where they find another time mold to send them back to present day. And after they reunited with Professor Egad, they explained to him about the situation that they're having with the past, with the only thing that they could have in handy is a small little artifact, which turns out to be the piece of the Cobalt Star that powered up the time machine. And whatever power this thing has seems to make the alien creatures a bit more aggressive. So Egad theorized maybe assembling them all together is probably the key to stopping the Shroob invasion. And so it's up to the brothers and babies to go across the Mushroom Kingdom Pass to assemble up the stars to see if they can defeat the Shroobs. Now after this point, once you head back to the present for the very first time, this is when the plot becomes a bit more segmented for the first few hours, due to the next two sections being mostly focusing on trying to get the MacGuffins. And along the way, try to stop the Shroob's operation as much as you can. Like during the second area, for example, as you're exploring through the forest trying to destroy this factory that's draining the lives of these toads, which are being used to power up the aliens' flying saucers. And of course, since this is about Baby Mario, you get to explore the various areas of Yoshi's Island, where the main conflict in this area is that the Shroobs brought in an alien equivalent Yoshi called Yube that devoured the entirety of the Yoshis. And due to all of this, people really consider this game as one of the more darker Mario games in the series because of the big alien threat. And while I do agree that there are several dark moments in this game because of what the aliens are doing, but as a whole, I do feel like this game is more comedic than overly dark. In a way, it's kind of like something like Sonic Adventure, for example, where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of dark moments, but as a whole, it's a lot more lighthearted, with the Shroobs themselves being an interesting antagonist, although as for original characters, besides the aliens, there really aren't really that much this time compared to Superstar Saga. Stuffwell could have been an interesting character, but he doesn't really have that much of personality other than he's a robot that tells you the way. Kylie Koopa is honestly one of the more interesting original characters in this game, since she's a journalist and she's looking for the big scoop for this alien invasion, who unfortunately gets caught up with a big scuffle against the aliens in multiple ways. No! But she does help Mario and Luigi along the way in certain areas. And other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to original characters in this game. There are these two toads that came along with Princess Peach, but they were pretty much gone in an instant. This game more so focuses on how much the aliens are affecting the Mushroom Kingdom. So like something like Toadtown, for example, which is usually a bustling place full of toads, is fully abandoned and filled with these alien invaders. And another thing too is that I feel like out of all the Mario and Luigi games, this game really focuses on the main party members, with the brothers and babies pretty much bouncing around on what's happening around them. Which does lead to some wholesome moments, like during a dire situation, Luigi decides to cheer the baby brothers up by giving them Yoshi cookies. Or when they meet each other up for the very first time in Bowser's Castle, the first thing the Mario Brothers does is make these funny faces to entertain the babies! And as for other characters in this game, I do feel like the big highlight of this game is definitely Toadsworth, who while being paranoid of Peach being taken, he decides to take his mind off by taking care of baby Peach with his younger counterpart. Which does lead to a lot of funny moments as well, like when they meet each other for the first time, Toadsworth just straight up chases around his past counterpart like a total psychopath, thinking that the time machine shrunk Peach and he was kidnapping her. And later on in the game, while they tried to entertain the young princess, they tried to do this small little rolling trick, but inadvertently flattened the kid. And my god, considering the fact of what happened earlier in the game and now this poor Toad's probably gonna die from a heart attack one day. Especially the fact that Bowser's just never gonna stop kidnapping Peach. But yeah, even though I don't feel like this game is as dark as people say it is, I do have to say is that this is still a really funny game. In fact, I think it's probably funnier than Superstar Saga, because I felt like the jokes in this game were a lot stronger, especially with Luigi, who plays off the babies really well in this story. Alrighty, so jumping all the way to gameplay for Partners in Time. It's pretty much the same as the last game, as you run across different areas and use your abilities to solve certain puzzles. But there are a few key differences between the two games. For one, this time you're not only playing as Mario and Luigi, but also there are baby versions who pretty much plays exactly the same as the brothers, with each of them being controlled by their respective face button. Although to make things very convenient, you're able to travel as one big group with the brothers piggybacking the babies, with the only times where you actually need to separate them is so you can use the babies' more unique abilities. Like for example, the adult brothers are able to throw the babies into higher places to travel through across secret passages or going through these different wells. And also, each of the groups have their unique bro moves to set themselves apart. Like how the brothers can do the returning spin jump to go across large gaps. Or they can do the simple roll move that allows them to go very fast for certain puzzles that requires you to race through the clock. With the only cons with the brothers is that they don't wield hammers, which is only exclusive to the babies. With the only bro move these two can do is drill, which is basically the dunk hammer from the last game, which allows you to crawl on the ground through these small little grate areas, which is basically finding more secret passages. And for the final movesets, well, the brothers can actually interact with the babies with their bro moves. Like when you do a spin jump near them, they'll float in the air for a sec and you can glide around through different gaps. Or you can use the roll move to turn them into pancakes so they can crease through certain areas. You can pretty much see a pattern with the baby's abilities. And another thing you can notice is that they really love to use the dual screen format of this game. As for most of the game, it's mostly played on the bottom screen, but for a lot of times, you're going to be using the top screen as well for the secret passages for the babies. That has special things like minigames that you can go through, which is very harmless for the most part, as you can explore these areas to get special goodies. As when it comes to actual exploration in this game, this is where it's mostly at. Because Partners in Time is fairly a bit more linear compared to Superstar Saga. Now while that game was linear as well for the most part, for the second half of the game it does open up a lot where you can explore the Beeping Kingdom as you liked. Especially after the fact when you unlock a special ability to go through areas you couldn't go through before. But with Partners in Crime, that's not really as common, with the only incentive to going back is just collecting these various beans. Oh yes, beans are back, although even though that they are everywhere in this game once more, they don't really do anything interesting for this game in particular, since in the last game you're able to make coffee that allows you to boost your stats. But in this game, they're basically currency so you can buy rare equipment. Although I've got to say, I really love how this area pretty much teases Fawful's return for the next game. As he states with the baby brothers, he's planning a special revenge for the Mario brothers. But going back to level design in this game, as another thing about this game, you essentially have one big hub world in this game this time, with Peach's Castle, with all the areas of the game being interconnected thanks to these time holes. Now while it's not very as big or interconnected like the Beeping Kingdom, I will say despite it being very small, it does feel a lot more compact. Plus, since you're in the present day meaning that there's no actual threat, it does have a sense of safeness as well, where you can do a couple things like finding special items, or going through the various shops. But going back to the areas you're exploring in the past, even though they are linear, I will say that they are still very well designed for the most part, and each of them does something very unique. Alrighty, now this wouldn't be a Mario and Luigi game without its trademark battle system, and I'm happy to say it is about as good as it was back in Superstar Saga, with a lot of enemies dealing a lot of interesting attacks for you to dodge through, with Partners in Time adding a few new things to make the battle system all fresh. For one, the bro attacks this time had a complete overhaul, where instead of Mario and Luigi attacking the enemies head-on, you're this time going to be using a special item to attack them, which can be various things like using a special shell to attack the enemies by bouncing each other with the shell, using the trampoline to stomp onto enemies multiple times, or shoot them with a array of fire or ice attacks. Which, fun fact, this is technically the game that debuted the Ice Flower, which is a move I honestly prefer over the Fire Flower, because it allows you to lower certain stats against the enemies. And what I think is very nifty is that for certain bro attacks, they actually add something if you have both the brothers and the babies together. Like for the aforementioned flower moves, if you have the babies on you, you're able to attack enemies that are flying in the air. I think my only criticism with the bro attacks this time around is that unlike other Mario and Luigi games where they have a special stamina meter called the bro points, in Partners in Time the bro attacks became a lot more resource based. So instead of being limited by meter, you're pretty much limited of how many times you can use a certain bro attack. Although finding the actual items is very easy because they really do hand these out to you. Which does lead to the similar issue of Superstar Saga, where you're able to abuse the bro tags when you're doing simple enemies. But with Superstar's case, even though it does have bro points, most of the attacks only ask you to give in about 3 of them, meaning at the near end where you're fully leveled up, you'll have so many bro points to the point you just don't have to worry if you're low on stamina. Although I do have to say is that between the two games, I think I would give the edge to Partners in Time because I feel like with some of the enemies and especially the bosses, they are a bit more challenging. Due to the fact that they just literally hand you these items, they do work around with the bosses because they have way more health this time compared to Superstar Saga. And the attacks these enemies do deal way more damage than the previous game, even when I was focusing on raising my defense. So it's really best to keep your toes up when you're trying to deal with these boss fights. Now, jumping back into the story, after the Mario Brothers infiltrated the Koopaceum in the Gritzy Desert, they finally found Peach before she was swallowed by Petey Piranha. And so after going all the way down to the caves and defeating the plant, they finally were able to reunite with Princess Peach, who for some reason has an alien mushroom stuck on her face. And so after bringing Peach back into present day, everyone tries to discuss on what to do with Peach due to her condition. But moments later, troublesome occurs at the castle when Bowser appears trying to kidnap Peach. The mushroom on Peach's face decides to shoot a projectile at Bowser, and I do not know why. He then eats it, which causes him to breathe this purple fog. And so with Mario and Luigi distracted, he then runs off before falling into a time hole and going back in time, with the brothers and babies going after him. And while they meet up with a young Professor Egad and inadvertently cause a small time paradox, Bowser, deep inside the volcano, meets with his past self for the very first time, and after a few minutes of bickering, they both decide to team up to defeat the Mario Brothers. Obviously it didn't go well for them, but then suddenly the volcano erupts once more, sending both Bowsers up in the sky, with the adult Bowser falling off the block and landing straight back into the time hole. And for baby Bowser, he then lands right on top of a UFO, where the thing then decides to take Peach back up to the mothership, with Mario and Luigi following after. But it turns out it might have been a good thing for Bowser to kidnap Peach, because it turns out that it was really Princess Shroob in disguise. All hope seems lost for the Mario Brothers until Kylie Koopa returns, helping them escape from the Shroobs. She also has a special key that might be the thing to stop the evil aliens. But unfortunately it turned out to be a red herring, as once they try to unlock something, they then fall off the ship via a trapdoor, which eventually leads them to Star Hill, where they get to summon the Star Spirit of the Cobalt Star, who explains to them that they need to assemble all the pieces together to defeat the Shroobs, with baby Luigi seeming to be very uneased by the entity. And by the end, the spirit then sends them to the final locations of the remaining Cobalt Stars, which is honestly probably the prettiest area in the game by far. Which leads me to the presentation real quick before we talk about the final points of this game. So with the visuals of the original Mario & Luigi game on GBA, it looked really good at the time with a lot of expressive animations and really well sprite forms. And Partners in Time pretty much carries that tradition, with all the characters from the last game getting a really nice facelift throughout. Especially for someone like Bowser, who always looked a bit off in the GBA version, but he looks way better in Partners in Time. And this even applies to the new characters introduced in this game, like the Shroobs for example. And the music in this game is very top-notch. It is a nice and effective evolution of the original GBA soundtrack, while standing on its own to set itself apart from the other Mario and Luigi games. Especially during the darker moments like in Holly Jolly Village, because my god, that is probably the most depressing holiday music I've heard. Same with Toad Town, because it really gives you a sense of everything's destroyed because of the aliens. And once we head all the way up to the Star Shrine, it really does have a good sense of magical and whimsiness to it. Especially when Luigi was able to prove himself worthy by this jackass of a Stargate, who pretty much bullies Luigi and saying he'll be alone forever. But anyway, so after going really deep into the Star Shrine, they were able to reunite with Toadbird, who has the final star piece. But after he found out that the Mario Brothers has the rest of the Cobalt Star pieces, he then ran away with fear with Kylie Koopa chasing after them before getting attacked by an alien creature. The Toad knows something about the star that the Mario Brothers doesn't, with the only clue that they have by him before he turns into a mushroom is this drawing that he made a few hours ago that you had to scratch dirt off. And I'm not kidding, this is literally the only time you use the touchscreen in this game. Yeah, the Nintendo DS, which is well known for the touchscreen, you don't really use it that much. Which, now that I think about it, considering the fact this is a very early DS game, That's probably for the best, because they could have made this game a lot worse if they had, like, tacky touchscreen mechanics. But anyway, so with all the main 5 shards assembled, that means they can finally access to Peach's castle in the past. And I really love this final part of the game. For the past 10 hours of playing through this game, Peach's castle was usually the safest part of the game. But when you travel all the way to the past, it is the most corrupted area of the entire Mushroom Kingdom. With all the halls that used to be filled with friendly toads, are now filled with endless and the most powerful guards in the game. As you slowly try to climb up all the way up to the castle areas, you even go up against a bunch of UFOs in this area by doing this small little minigame where you get to pilot the UFO and take them all out. And then finally, once you climb all the way up to the castle, you finally meet up with the actual Princess Peach. However, you're not done taking down the Shroobs, as the princess decided to take down the entire castle of her mothership. And so after a small boss fight up in the sky by taking down the entirety of the mothership, there is no more hiding for Princess Shroob. And so it's time for the brothers and babies to face her once and for all. And my god, this boss fight is pretty damn challenging. So it's best to try and stock up with items as much as you can. Especially since after you defeat this boss fight, you are far from being done. As after you're done taking down Princess Shroob, the Mario Brothers seems to save the day once again, with Princess Peach even has the final piece for the Cobalt Star. But Peach refuses them to assemble the final part of the star. And this is when Baby Bowser returns trying to steal the Cobalt Star, where he was able to assemble the pieces himself. This is when the Cobalt Star begins to activate and immediately turns Baby Bowser into a purple mushroom. And this is when the biggest twist comes into play, or at least you want to call it that. This is where it turns out that there was an older Princess Shroob this entire time as the older sister. As once Princess Peach and the Toads arrived back in the past, they were immediately ambushed by the elder princess, and out of quick thinking, Peach then uses the Cobalt Star to seal her way inside of it. So this entire time when you were trying to assemble all the Cobalt Star pieces together, you were essentially slowly freeing the Elder Shroob from her prison. And now with the final piece in place, the Elder Shroob is freed, who is ready to send in the full-scale invasion once more, and sends everyone flying all the way up into the sky, where the final battle ensues. And man, this boss fight is one hell of a final battle. Like, I'm not kidding, the differences between this one and the last boss fight was night and day for me, with the first phase being mostly easy as you try to dodge the UFOs, and Peach even tries to help you by giving you special helps or trying to give you an item that can defeat the ships. It's not until the second phase where it becomes very serious, as she turns into this giant beast, with the only thing she really cares about is trying to kill the Mario Brothers. And my god, the music in this final battle is something else. Out of all the Mario RPG final boss music, this one definitely feels the most somber out of them all, like you're ready to take this beast out of its misery. Especially considering that this was a really damn long boss fight. I probably should have leveled up a bit more because this one final boss took me 1 hour to beat. But I've got to say, it was very satisfying to get that final blow on Princess Shroob. And when everything is said and done, the Shroobs are finally defeated. And after a little playtime accident with baby Luigi, it turns out that the cure for the affected toads turned into mushrooms is really baby tears. And thanks to this knowledge, Professor Eguy was able to make a special chemical to make up for the baby tears, and it was able to spread it all around the Mushroom Kingdom past. And so all the people that were affected by the aliens went back to normal. And so peace has been finally restored back in the Mushroom Kingdom, with the only thing left to concern about is what to do with Bowser. After what happened back in the mountain area where he falls back into the time hole, he was pretty much unconscious this entire time at Peach's castle. And while everyone ponders, the mysterious mushroom that baby Luigi picked up after defeating the Elder Shroom begins to move suddenly and goes near Bowser. And I guess Bowser learned nothing last time he ate a mysterious mushroom, begins to eat another mysterious mushroom, which is when he wakes up all powerful, where now he turns into Shrowser. And you know that really cool final boss we did earlier? That turns out to be the pre-ultimate boss fight, as this is the real final boss apparently. Although interestingly though, for this boss fight, you don't attack Bowser at all. Instead, you're required to do counterattacks instead. Honestly, on its own, the boss fight is still pretty fun, but man, I just find it funny how we went from this to this. But that being said, after you defeat Bowser once again, everything can finally go back to normal as everyone says goodbye to their past selves. Luigi gives his past self one final Yoshi cookie, while the latter gives him one final concussion, right before they all head back to the time machine to go back to their proper time. And that concludes Mario & Luigi Partners in Time. And overall, even though I do have some gripes with it, I still find this as a really good Mario RPG game. While I do think some things were done a bit better than Superstar Saga, like the overall feeling a lot more fleshed out and open, but I do feel like there were some things that were done better in Partners in Time as well. Like, I feel like the humor in this game was a lot funnier than Superstar Saga, and I do feel like the battle system in this game feels a lot more refined, even though it's not entirely perfect. If you're very curious on this game, then I highly recommend trying it out, because even with its flaws, like the game being a bit too easy, I still think this is a very good RPG game. But as for my personal thoughts on it compared to other Mario RPG games, I do feel like this is one of the more weaker entries. Especially compared to the next entry in the series, which is highly considered one of the most acclaimed RPG games of all time. And it is the first Mario & Luigi game I've ever played. So I'm very excited to talk about this game very soon.
Role-play fans in Japan have discovered that Bowser, that long-time bad guy, really does suck. And I mean that in a good way.
The Mario & Luigi series has been a franchise that I've been playing for most of my life now, with all the games being really fun and engaging RPGs. And after the great success of Superstar Saga, Alpha Dream went on to the Nintendo DS with Partners in Time, and despite it being a bit more flawed with its level design, I still think this is a really fun RPG. But with two pretty good games under Alpha Dream's belt, there's only one thing else to go but up. As 4 years after Partners in Time release, we would get another entry of the series during the midpoint of the Nintendo DS's life. But this time, this entry is going to be taking a much more interesting twist to the gameplay. As Mario and Luigi are still the main characters in this game, but this time, the story will be focusing a lot more on Bowser this time around. As while the Koopa King will be traveling across the Mushroom Kingdom, the brothers will be traveling within Bowser's body. Which, honestly on paper, sounds like a really dumb concept, but in execution, this is considered one of the most acclaimed Mario RPG games ever made. And it's also a game I have a lot of nostalgic memories for. When I was very young, I first ever heard about this game when I was looking through this place called the Nintendo Channel site. Which, for those who don't know, it was a software on the Wii that allows you to see the latest Nintendo news and see trailers for upcoming games, and one of them was Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, which was also the very first time I ever heard about the Mario & Luigi series. And seeing that trailer really got me intrigued on what this game is all about, and eventually on my birthday, my cousin sent me a little letter saying that I will be getting the game when it comes out. I'll be honest, I was a bit more confused on what they meant by that, but then a few months later when it finally did come out, my cousins went by my house and gave me the game. I went through that game completely blind, and honestly, that game really blew me away. And so for this video, I'm going to be focusing specifically on the Nintendo DS version, but I'm going to talk about the 3DS version later on in this video. Because, oh boy, that game is, that's something to talk about. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so starting the game up, we have that ever so iconic title screen that I still adore to this very day. As the shot of Peach's castle and Bowser's castle being reflected just feels this very whimsical vibe that I really adore. But as for the story, it begins in the ever so peaceful area of Toad Town, as it focuses a bit on this small little Toad kid who returns home to his mother. He tries to greet his father as well until suddenly... So what that was the beginning of a crisis, which is known as the Blorbs, which causes the Toads to turn into basically giant boulders. With the cause of this being a mysterious figure arriving at the Mushroom Kingdom giving these Toads a special mushroom. And because of this, Peach holds an important conference within her castle to figure out what to do with this situation, with Mario and Luigi being the ones who attended. As well as Starlo, a small little star creature who is the representative of the Star Spirits. However, Bowser eventually arrives to try and kidnap Peach, where Mario was able to defeat him with ease with the help of Peach, who was able to weaken Bowser, and then flings him in the air like he was nothing. After that humiliating battle, Bowser finds himself very deep inside of the woods, where after searching around, he eventually finds this mysterious cloaked person who says he's won a prize, which is something called the Lucky Shroom, and if Bowser eats it, he would have the ability to defeat Mario. And so Bowser immediately claims the mushroom as his, and once he eats it, it immediately causes a reaction within his body, which causes him to turn into a giant vacuum cleaner, as he literally inhales everything in his path like he's freaking Kirby. And this is when it's revealed that the mysterious cloak figure is indeed Fawful, making his grand return from Superstar Saga. And he was the one that caused this whole outbreak to cause the Mushroom Kingdom into shambles. And so with this brand new ability for Bowser, he immediately goes back to Peach's castle.
Suck! Suck! Suck!
However, after consuming everyone, he then passes out. And so with everyone gone, this is Fawful's opportunity to take over Peach's castle. But as for the Mario Brothers, they have been shrunken down and became deep inside of the turtle's belly, where he was able to find both Luigi and Starlo, with the latter being the guide throughout their adventure. But eventually, Mario and Luigi find themselves in a small little corridor area, where they mess around with Bowser's nurse, which causes him to wake up, with Starlo trying to speak to Bowser within his stomach, with the giant turtle being confused about a mysterious being within his body, with Starlo calling herself Chippy to keep a low profile while talking to Bowser. But as for his whereabouts, it turns out when he was knocked out cold in Peach's castle, Fawful took him and landed him within the caves, as he's completely weakened and cannot even breathe fire. But eventually, as he finds his way out, he then encounters Fawful once again, where he reveals his master plan, as he's here to try and conquer the kingdom, and not only he has taken over Peach's castle, but just now he's taken over Bowser's own castle, with Bowser's minions being in big trouble. And so it's now up to Mario, Luigi, Bowser to stop Fawful and try to save the kingdom. The story in this game is honestly pretty strong for the most part. I really love how all the trio this time around has the same goal, but they aren't necessarily working together per se. Like, obviously Mario and Luigi want to stop Fawful from taking over the kingdom, but Bowser wants to stop Fawful because he stole all of his minions. As by the time Bowser arrives back at his castle, all of his minions have been brainwashed by Fawful, and the few ones that haven't have been caged up. That, and Bowser just really hates Fawful. But speaking of which, just like in Superstar Saga, he's still a very charming villain. I really like how he kind of speaks in this broken English kind of way. Kind of like if his dialogue went through a very shoddy translation. And I also like how you can feel he has a sense of narcissism, as he's literally plastered his face across the entire kingdom. But he's not alone during this world domination, because now he has his own minion with Midbus, who is basically Bowser's big rival throughout his own adventure. As while he traverses through the Mushroom Kingdom, he'll meet a lot of these weird characters along the way. Like this weird sentient block creature called Brock Messier, who's this little block creature that's Bowser's salesman. I really love his design, like how he's able to take off his head and flip it upside down to make a really evil looking face. He also has this hilariously aggressive block dog as well. But besides those, there's even these trio of minions for Bowser that helps him along the way, but they more so just tick Bowser off, as while Bowser was dealing with this annoying Wiggler, he overheard them making fun of him behind his back. Which honestly did give me a good chuckle. I gotta say, I really love what they did with Bowser in this game. With the last two Mario and Luigi games, Bowser didn't necessarily have a big presence. I mean, hell, in Partners in Time, he barely appeared in the game. But now, since this game is full front and center with him being the main protagonist, you get to see a lot more of Bowser's much more goofy personality. I really love how much he has a short temper in this game. There's this one section where he's near a statue that states it's a replica of the legendary powerful hero, that he tries to reflect it on himself until he realizes that the statue is ugly. But as for the Mario Brothers, they're about as charming as the other games in the series. Luigi is still definitely the highlight as the comic relief character, and honestly I really adore Starlo as well, because she plays off at Luigi very well in this game. I don't necessarily get the hate for the character, as from what I've seen, people don't really like her that much, mostly because she bashes Luigi a lot. And while she does make a joke here and there, she doesn't necessarily bash him too much, and even when she's a lot more aggressive towards him, it's mostly deserved, as there were a couple of times where Luigi just straight up chickened out from this adventure. But I think the best thing that they included in this game is that Mario and Luigi talks a lot in this adventure, and not necessarily talk like they speak outright dialogue, but every time they try to communicate with each other or someone else, they talk in this very Italian gibberish way that's honestly very charming. You could tell Charles had fun recording this.
E tutte le cottorate ton simpatichete. E tutto armatato. E pocon se ta cottorapota con a posto che sa ora par grato. Potono tunita na tunna na sanatona canara sanana.
Alrighty, so jumping all the way to gameplay. So just like the previous Mario & Luigi games, the brothers this time around pretty much controls exactly the same. With the brothers, you explore different parts of the area while having special abilities, which are all returning ones from past games, like Luigi being able to squish Mario to go through narrow areas, or Mario and Luigi doing this special spin jump to go through larger gaps. But what makes this game much more different compared to the other ones is that since we're exploring Bowser's body in this game, it's now presented in a 2D side-scrolling way. While outside of Bowser in the Mushroom Kingdom is presented in a 3D way, which is a really cool contrast. And they really went all out trying to make every part of Bowser's body interesting to explore, with the primary areas in this game having a unique gimmick from one another. Like for example, there's this area called the water pump where every time Bowser tries to drink as much water as he can, the whole area will fill up into this underwater section. And later on in this game, Bowser will be in this small little facility with a special x-ray machine that'll cause certain objects to appear within his body. But then we have certain areas which are used for certain minigames. As throughout Bowser's adventure, Mario and Luigi will aid him in certain areas, like in Dimble Woods when Bowser needs to pull out a giant carrot. Mario and Luigi will then go into Bowser's arms to try and enhance his strength. Or later on in the game, Bowser needs to help these multi-moles drill a hole inside of Toad Town, with Mario and Luigi going down his pelvis to try and enhance his strength. These minigames may not be very mind-blowing, but they're pretty cute, I'll just say. But as for Bowser, he plays drastically differently compared to Mario and Luigi. For one, unlike the brothers where they only have one button each to command, Bowser this time around has 2 buttons to command, where instead of having the ability to jump or use a hammer, the Koopa King will instead have the ability to punch certain objects, or use his fire breath to burn certain wood. But later on in the game, Bowser will be able to unlock even more abilities, like doing a special slide punch, that not only gives Bowser a short burst of speed, but also similar to something like Donkey Kong Country or Crash Bandicoot, Bowser can have a little bit of hang time, which does lead to interesting platforming challenges. Honestly, exploring as Bowser in this game is very fun. I really adore, like, every time you walk, he has, like, this very heavy presence around him, especially with those very loud footsteps. Doubly so if you compare it to the brothers, who are a bit more agile since they're able to jump and such. Especially when we head to the... Okay, so for the battle system for Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. For the brothers, it's basically identical with the previous games, as you use jump and hammers to attack enemies to get experience points and such. The battle system in this game is still very fun. It's very fun to try and counter-attack these enemies, but this time around the brothers have a brand new item with them called the badges. And how these work is that in the battles, there's a small little gauge where every time you do a small little action command, the thing will slowly build up. And when it does, you can do a bunch of small things, like give you a bit more health or bro points. But if you want to be a bit more offensive, you can have a special badge to make you a lot stronger. This is honestly a really cool addition, and adds a bit more strategy to the battles, as you're encouraged to try to do your best when it comes to attacking, especially with the brand new special items. Now with the previous Mario & Luigi games, I was a bit more critical with the bro attacks in those games, because what the problem with Superstar Saga is that you have very powerful bro attacks, but it requires very little bro points to use them, meaning that they're pretty much abusable. Meaning that you'll get experience points very fast, and by the time I got to Bowletta, I was able to kill her in one turn. And in Partners in Time, they introduced these bro items, but the problem is that they made it resource-based. But jumping all the way to Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, I feel like this is when they perfected the bro attacks. As throughout the game, you'll find these special puzzle pieces, and when you complete them, you get a special new bro move. How you get them is a bit weird, because sometimes they just outright hand you all of them, and other times they just hand you in big chunks. But regardless, this is a massive improvement, mostly because it has a really nice natural progression how you get these items. As you start off with the much more weaker ones, like the green shell that requires you to have 3 bro points, but then jumping all the way to the end as you have the most powerful items in the game, that requires you to have about 20 bro points. That way it makes it feel like you need to choose the attacks much more wisely. And the attacks themselves are pretty cool little spectacles. I always adore these and watch Mario and Luigi do these weird little attack antics. Like Luigi wearing this weird spring hat for Mario to jump on to land on the enemies. Or this one as Mario throws this giant beach ball against the enemies with Luigi on top of it. But the weirdest one I can think of in this game has the snack basket. As with this one, Luigi needs to eat as much snacks as he can, where he suddenly grows ginormously fat and Mario needs to throw up in the air and he slams down. Like, how do you come up with something like that? And then there's Bowser. Just like in the overall, Bowser plays a bit more differently compared to the brothers, as instead of jumping on the enemies or using hammers and such, Bowser this time will punch the enemies or use his fire breath, with the punch being very useful against one enemy, while the fire breath is very good for multiple enemies. But as for Bowser's special moves, so unlike Mario and Luigi where they're able to find their special moves via these puzzle pieces, in Bowser's case, throughout his adventure, he'll find his minions trapped in cages, and when he releases them, he's able to use them as his special attacks. And unlike the brothers where they use the buttons for their special attacks, Bowser focuses on the touchscreen. Like when he uses Goomba Storms, you need to tap the Goombas so he can breathe fire so he can do a powerful attack. Although I've got to say, when I was young, I freaking hated some of these moves. With the Goombas cases, that I feel like they move way too fast. But as for the other ones, I do like the Shy Guy Squad as you launch Bowser out of a slingshot, or the Koopa Corps where you're basically playing as Pong as you need to deflect the Koopa shells. And Broccoli Bunker is probably my favorite one because it's the most powerful one in the game, and also I just find it visually humorous of Bowser just washing a dog. Like, there's this literally life or death situation for the entire kingdom, and Bowser is just scrubbing this dog. But how you unlock this guy is very different from Bowser's other minions, as throughout the kingdom you'll have these special enemies that have a creature with them called the Blitties. There's about 15 of them and they're spread across the Mushroom Kingdom, and once you collect all of them, Frenchie will give you his dog as a reward. But how you collect the Blitties is another story, as in order to do so, you need to use Bowser's final main move for the battles. As since he ate the vacuum shroom, Bowser now has the ability to inhale certain enemies. And when he does so, Mario and Luigi is able to fight them inside of Bowser's stomach. And when we head to the boss fights, they're pretty top notch, as all of them literally have a really good difficulty curve to them. And I especially love the ones you're fighting specifically within Bowser, because some of these can be a bit very weird looking. Like, I never thought of Mario and Luigi fighting a robotic Mario and Luigi. With the only gripe I could think of is that I kinda wish Bowser had one more boss to fight with. Because right after the second Mid-Biss boss fight, you don't get a regular Bowser boss fight until you get to the third Mid-Biss boss in the game, which is at the near end of this game. That is because throughout the game, Bowser will have his own special boss fights, as a couple of times, a giant thing will attack Bowser and put him in the brink of death. Where after doing a small little minigame with Mario and Luigi, Bowser will go insanely giant. Which I have to admit, when I was a kid, I always thought this was literally the coolest moment ever. Like, come on, you're playing as a freaking giant punching your own castle. That is freaking cool. With the only critique I can think of for these sections is that they are surprisingly very easy. Like, there's not necessarily a strategy of doing a lot of these bosses. I mean, hell, even your level status doesn't have a really effect during these things either. But it does give you a good chunk of EXP. So even though these boss fights are pretty easy, at the very least it does give you good rewards, and it's very cool to look at, but I feel like Dream Team did the giant battles a bit better. Alright, so jumping back to the story for a bit, so after Bowser returns back to his castle, he realized that Fawful has taken control of his army and turned his own castle into a theater, where after defeating Mid-Biss, Fawful has taken Bowser into a small little dining area to feast on. Bowser gets very excited about this because he hasn't eaten all day, but as soon as he gets full, a bunch of booze shows up where they start just straight up force feeding a bunch of stuff, to the point where Bowser became overly obese, which causes him to fall into the floor, with the Mario Brothers just straight up ignoring him for the time being so they can search for Peach, which they eventually do so in the Flab Zone, where the princess explains a lot more about Fawful's motivation. As it turns out, is that Fawful's true goal in this game is try to reawaken the Dark Star, where years ago, archaeologists discovered this weird entity that causes the entire kingdom into chaos. It could have destroyed the entire world until the Star Sprites comes in where they seal the evil entity, as the Dark Star goes into slumber deep inside of the Mushroom Kingdom, with the only one being able to reawaken it is Peach. And just in the nick of time too, because Fawful has arrived next to Bowser, where it's revealed that he purposely put chemicals within the food, that way he can fatten up Bowser super fast. You know, considering that and he turned all the toads into balloons and he said he purposely made Bowser vor Peach, I feel like Fawful might be the type of person that have like a personal DeviantArt account, if you know what I mean. But despite him barely hiding the fact what makes him tick, it still worked for the most part because Bowser is very vulnerable, meaning that Fawful was able to shoot a laser at him, which allows Fawful to kidnap Peach by taking her out of Bowser's body. And so now that the mad scientist has the princess, he then gives Bowser a treadmill, which allows him to lose all that weight, but in the process, he accidentally blows himself up into the caves. Where after searching around, he eventually finds himself underneath Toad Town, where the security system electrocutes him unconscious. And thanks to this, Mario and Luigi are able to access this small little area full of warp pipes. And now they're able to exit outside of Bowser's body. But as soon as they head back to the surface, they realize that the blorb situation is getting a lot worse. And not just that, but also since Fafa is still in the core of the Dark Star, he was able to put up this giant security measure to prevent anyone to head into Peach's castle. And after traveling across of Toad Town, they eventually find themselves with Dr. Toadley, a very special doctor that could figure out the solution to all of this. With the answer being is that Mario and Luigi needs to travel across the kingdom to figure out where to find the Star Cures. Which are these artifacts where if you collect all three of them, it may be the help to break the barriers, and not just that, but also cure the Toads with the blorbs. And this leads to the second half of Bowser's Inside Story. So now that Mario and Luigi are outside of Bowser's body, they can travel the Mushroom Kingdom to places that you couldn't before. With the primary example being the main mission you go through within Dimble Woods, where you need to collect all these attack pieces here to unlock a special move to get the final Star Cure. Which leads to a funny small plot where Mario gets captured by these small little creatures, and when Luigi tries to chase afterwards, he finds himself being inside of a dead Luigi's just running on a dead body. And the funniest part too is like the other creatures doesn't realize that the guy's dead. But as for other things, you could try and to complete some criterias within the game, like trying to collect every single beans again. Oh yes, beans are back, and they work drastically different compared to the past two games. With the first game, they're pretty much collectibles as you use them to convert it into coffee. But in the second game, they're pretty much used as currency for Fawful's little shop. But in Bowser's Inside Story, I think they figure out a way to work them the best, because instead of them being currency or used for a special item, this time around they're used as a special stat boost, that way you can have a bit more strategy on how much you want to upgrade the characters. And this new mechanic works extremely well for an RPG, because there's an even greater purpose of collecting these beans as they are used to make you even stronger. And you can even test these out on some optional side missions, with the most well-known one being is that if you travel back to Bowser's castle, you can find a small little freezer area, and once you punch a code, you can go deeper inside. And what's locked up within these areas are none other than the shrooms. Which honestly blew my mind when I was a kid, because I played through Partners in Time as well, and when I saw the shrooms again, it actually caught me by surprise. They're not necessarily challenging in a way, but it's a really cool callback to the previous game. I also like how they somewhat call back to with the events in Partners in Time where they were able to fight them as babies, with Starlo doing the one actual insult she did to Luigi in this game, where she jokingly states that baby Luigi fought them with his baby tears. Although ironically that was kind of the case within the game. But props to Mario for actually backing Luigi in this scene, because even though I don't really agree with the fact that Starlo only insults Luigi, I will say that she did go a bit too far with that joke. Because come on, look how sad she made Luigi. Look at him. So now with the presentation of this game, I've always said in the past that Mario and Luigi games look really good graphically, but Bowser's Inside Story took that graphical style and topped it up full time. This is easily one of the best looking DS games ever made. Scratch that, this is one of the best looking sprite-based Mario games ever made, as I really love how all the characters look in this game. With the previous games, the characters looked pretty good, but there was always like something off about one of them occasionally. Like in Superstar Saga, Bowser looked a bit off, and in Partners in Time, Mario and Luigi looked a bit off, especially with Luigi, I don't know why. But now in Bowser's Inside Story, every single character in this game looks really good. Especially with Bowser, I really love how he looks in this game and how expressive he is. This front face of Bowser really speaks volumes to me. And this can be applied to literally every single character in this game, like all of them look excellent. Fawful looks great, Peach looks great, Star looks great, everyone in this game looks great, as they all have this really nice and round aesthetic to them. Doubly so with the environments as well. Everything looks very bright and colorful as you expect, which is a really cool contrast between the much more abstract look within Bowser's body. Which I've gotta say is probably a big achievement from Alpha Dream, because it's not going to be easy to make environments look appealing if it's based on someone's insides. So the fact that Alpha Dream was able to achieve this is very impressive. And another thing they were able to achieve in this game is the soundtrack, because, well, I've gotta say, Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story has to be one of my favorite Mario RPG soundtracks of all time, period. Yoko Shimomura never misses, and this game is no exception, as her style really does capture the much more bouncy aesthetic with Mario & Luigi, especially when you compare it to the same soundtrack with the 3DS remake, where it's still good, but it doesn't really hit the mark. Alright, the Nintendo 3DS remake, this is gonna be a doozy. So in early 2018, Nintendo announced in a Nintendo Direct a full-on remake of Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. In between some big announcements like the Splatoon 2 Octo expansion, Crash Bandicoot coming to Nintendo Switch, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And when I first ever saw this during that Direct, I was just mostly confused. And then I got pissed off when they announced Luigi's Mansion on 3DS. Like, this remake got announced a year after the Nintendo Switch released. And the game itself wouldn't get released until nearly 2 years when the Switch is in the market. Because hey, if Shantae did it years ago, why not Mario & Luigi? And to add insult to injury, when the remake released on Nintendo 3DS, it was around the time when Nintendo released New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. And the final result is a remake that became one of the worst selling Mario games of all time, period. As it released on a platform that most people moved on from, and regardless on how stagnated New Super Mario Bros. U was, people would just generally prefer to play a Mario platformer than a RPG. So Nintendo's marketing was mostly pushed on New Super Mario Bros. U. With the only big attention the Bowser's Inside Story remake got when it first released, was a one-off video someone made about an amiibo being shoved right up Bowser's f***ing ass. But that's just sales-wise. Is the game itself any good as a remake? Well, I actually picked up the remake and played it earlier this year before Mario & Luigi Brothership got announced, and honestly, if you don't own the DS version and just have the 3DS version, I'd say Bowser's Inside Story on 3DS is a decent version of the game. But I feel like fundamentally, the Nintendo DS version is still the best way to play the game. And it's way cheaper too. I mostly bought it just to complete my Mario & Luigi collection. But the reason why I can't say the 3DS version is the best one, because there's just these little snags here and here that just adds up. In the original DS version, the game runs at a smooth 60 FPS, but jumping all the way to Nintendo 3DS, it is now locked at 30 FPS. Now, I'm not really that picky when it comes to frame rate and such, like I've played a lot of Switch ports over the years. But the problem is that the pacing for the 3DS version is just much slower than the original. Doubly so if you compare it to the Superstar Saga remake, which runs at 60 FPS, and generally just has a much more faster pace to it. And while we're comparing the two remakes, when Alpha Dream released Superstar Saga on Nintendo 3DS, the quality and life improvements they added to this game was a significant improvement from the original GBA because we were jumping 2 consoles ahead. As not only they were able to streamline the overall in this game to make the flow a lot more faster and more fun, they also made battles in that game a lot more challenging, which was my main criticism with Superstar Saga, is that it was way too easy, as they were able to implement the much more modern structure of the Mario & Luigi games. But jumping all the way up to the Bowser's Inside Story remake, the improvements that they try to do in this version isn't as significant as what they did in Superstar Saga. That's because with Superstar Saga, that was the first ever game in the series, so there was going to be a lot of growing pains. But for the original version of Bowser's Inside Story, this was when they basically perfected the Mario & Luigi gameplay, so the new stuff that they added in this version isn't really that impressive. Doubly so with the new art style for Bowser's Inside Story. I was a fan of the 3DS remakes because I always adored the Dream Team art style more than the Superstar Saga one, but not as much as the Bowser's Inside Story one, especially with Bowser's sprite in this game. I feel like this worked better in Dream Team and Paper Jam because he was the main villain, but in this game, since they lean a lot more to his more comedic side, I just feel like this sprite doesn't really work as well. Because look at him, he's so chunky. I think the only thing I feel like the remake does in terms of better art style is probably the environments. Because wow, some of these shading effects for the environments look really good. Especially when you travel inside of Bowser, because it really does have a different feel from the DS version. As I feel like with the new graphics, it really emphasized the fact that you're traveling inside of someone's stomach. And also huge props to the upgraded giant battle scenes, as now instead of being just 2D sprites, they are now fully 3D animated. And all of this was thanks to Arzes, who made one of the most underrated 3DS games. And as for the brand new soundtrack for Bowser's Inside Story remake, honestly the new remixes here sound really good. At first I wasn't really too big on some of the remixes, like I prefer the original DS version of Cavi Cape, but the more I played a while ago, the more the music grew on me, to the point where I could say that I'd say they're on equal grounds, with some soundtracks I prefer on the DS, while others I prefer on the 3DS. With the only one that actually disappointed me is probably the new title theme music, because unlike the other ones, the new title theme is not a remix, but a completely new song. And honestly, it's not really as good. And yes, as you can see, there is another side mode to this game, similar to the Superstar Saga remake. This time around, focusing a lot more on Bowser Jr. as a character. I'll be completely honest, I have not played much of this mode, mostly because the same complaints I have for Bowser's minions with the last remake, it's the exact same thing with Bowser Jr.'s journey, because man, I really hate this battle system. I would rather play Sticker Star's battle system more than this. And because of this, I mostly looked up the cutscenes on YouTube, and honestly, the story here is pretty solid. I just wish it wasn't attached to this mediocre side mode. But at the very least, it's a completely optional side game, so it really doesn't affect the Bowser's Inside Story remake too much. With the only truly big flaw for this remake is that it's on a 3DS. This remake really should have been on the Nintendo Switch, because I feel like people would love to see a game like this in HD. And also, you can already play your freaking DS games on 3DS. What was the point of this remake? Superstar Saga made sense because you couldn't play a GBA game on the 3DS, but Bowser's Inside Story, you could. But no, Alpha Dream stick to the guns and release this on the dying console. And because of the massive flop as well as a lot of debt that was just adding up over the years, I recommend watching this video. Alpha Dream then eventually filed up for bankruptcy. And we wouldn't see anything Mario and Luigi related for about 5 years after this. But I feel like the good thing that came out of all of this is that it was pretty much a wake-up call for Nintendo. The 3DS had a really good run, but it's time to move on to bigger things. Alrighty, so after getting depressed after that section, I feel like it's time to wrap up the adventure. So as soon as Mario and Luigi was able to collect all 3 of the Star Cures, Dr. Chodley was able to convert them all into the Miracle Cure. And so all the Blorbs have converted back to normal. But most importantly, Mario and Luigi can go back to Peach's castle finally. And boy, they're in for a real treat because Fawful really did a number at Peach's castle. With giant dangerous robots everywhere with statues that have Fawful's face all over it, it really does give Fawful a much more sinister tone. But as soon as the brothers was able to take out the trash bot, Bowser then arrives at Peach's castle in a safe. Earlier in the game when Bowser was trying to get one of the Star Cures, his own minions betray him by locking him up in the safe, which really did a number on his bag, and so after Mario and Luigi was able to mend it, Bowser learns one final move, which is the roll. And so he was able to head straight into Peach's castle, where after he was able to go through various guards in this big old maze, Bowser was finally able to find Fawful, and after defeating Nimbus one last time where he literally dies, the Dark Star has finally awakened. And so Fawful then absorbs half the Dark Star's energy and turns into this weird dark form, where Bowser straight up punches him and laughs that he was finally be able to got him. But then suddenly, the Dark Star then moves and goes straight into Bowser's stomach, with the Mario Brothers chasing afterwards. After going deeper and deeper inside the belly of the beast, they realize the Dark Star is planning something, as throughout the areas he's been chewing down on Bowser's DNA, which allows him to copy his moves, and when they were finally to corner him, he then dissolves back into the surface, as he's completely converted into Dark Bowser, an evil entity that looks like Bowser, which is also a character that honestly probably brought up some interesting fan art. Like, this came out during the 2000s, and one of the biggest trends around that time was having an eviler version of a character. But anywho, so as soon as Dark Bowser was able to get to the surface area, he then heads forth to find Fawful, who has taken half of his power. And so Bowser needs to find Fawful quickly before this evil entity completes his powers, which he was luckily able to do so in the exact same location this whole game started. And so the final battle pursues for Fawful, who is a very challenging villain, as he has so much tricks up his sleeves thanks to the Dark Star's energy. But as soon as Bowser was able to get the final punch in, Fawful then gets reduced into a small little spider that runs off, with Dark Bowser finally being able to catch up to him and absorbs Fawful inside of him. And now Dark Bowser is finally complete, which means there is only one thing left to do. As soon as Dark Bowser was able to go all the way up to Peach's castle, he then unleashes his main power, which is a big windstorm to pretty much wipe out everything. With Starlo then chipping in for one final talk with Bowser, who states that he's not going to be alone during this final battle, with Mario and Luigi then chipping in, with Bowser being confused on why he's hearing the brothers. But as for Dark Bowser, he states that everything's going to go into darkness and he'll be wiped out. But all Bowser does is scoff at his little statement, as he states that he will defeat him and the Mushroom Kingdom will be his to conquer. And so the final battle pursues, and my god, this is probably the most epic final battle in any Mario game ever. As the tone, the music, and everything is just perfect here. I freaking love the grand finale. It is honestly one of my favorite final battle musics. And the best part too is that this is only phase 1 of this battle. As soon as Bowser was able to get Dark Bowser in low health, he then coughs out Fawful that Bowser was able to inhale. And so we then head inside of Bowser's stomach for the Mario Brothers to fight Fawful for one final time. And man, Fawful looks really freaky here. As he's no longer a being creature, he's this giant evil entity that the Mario Brothers will soon be able to defeat in such an ironic way for Fawful. With Superstar Saga, Cackletta was Fawful's former boss that the Mario Brothers was able to defeat inside of Bowser's body. And now jumping all the way to Bowser's inside story, Fawful is having the same fate of being defeated inside of Bowser's body, which is a really cool way to conclude an iconic Mario villain like Fawful. And now with Fawful defeated, it's time for Bowser to do the final blow. And so, with that final blow, the Dark Star has finally been defeated, with this destructive windstorm being lifted. And now with Fawful and Dark Star defeated, Bowser finally has the opportunity to kidnap Peach, much to Starlo's dismay. But then suddenly, Fawful then appears again, being only ahead this time, where he states that Fawful is completely done as he quits being a villain, and states that he will disappear forever. But of course, he has one final trick up his sleeve and explodes right in front of Mario and Luigi. But instead of the explosion killing them, it instead releases everyone outside of Bowser's body. With the Koopa King then realizes that this entire time everything that's been happening to him has been Mario and Luigi's doing. Which obviously sets Bowser up in flames as he wants to fight Mario and Luigi because he feels very violated. And of course, the brothers ended up on top with Bowser getting his ass kicked all the way back to his castle. Yep, things are definitely back to normal in that one. And that concludes Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. This is honestly still one of the best Mario RPG games ever made. Like, I'm not kidding, this game is freaking phenomenal. It refines on what makes the past Mario and Luigi games great and put it into near perfection. And how they implement Bowser in this game is really good too. I really adore how much he plays very differently, but similar at the same time. And the slapstick humor that the series is known for is still here and accounted. If you're very curious on the Mario and Luigi games, I highly recommend trying out Bowser's Inside Story, as it's definitely one of my favorite Mario games of all time. And I think Alpha Dream knew about this because about 4 years after Bowser's Inside Story released, we would get a full-on sequel to this game with Mario and Luigi Dream Team. So the next time we'll be here, we'll be jumping straight into Mario and Luigi's first ever 3DS game. But they'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye-bye! The Nintendo 3DS was a very interesting time for Nintendo. While their main console, the Wii U, was struggling badly in sales-wise and trying to get games, the 3DS was thriving around this time with so many great games over the years. And of course, since it is a Nintendo console, Mario's going to be one of the main ones on this platform, as he had plenty of games released on the Nintendo 3DS. However, this was around the time when the Mario series kinda shifted a bit. As compared to previous Nintendo generations, Nintendo kinda played a bit more safe with the Mario series during this time as well. Not necessarily gameplay-wise, because the Mario Party series was freaking experimental as hell around this time, but you really got the sense of Mario slowly losing his edge. Especially since the spin-offs were a lot more hit or miss. Not in the same degree as other platformer series like Donkey Kong or Sonic, but you could really tell that something was up. And I feel like because of this, people don't really take a lot of focus on what released around this time for the Mario series. Because every time when people talk about the Mario series around this point, they mostly talk about how some of these games kind of ruined some part of the Mario series, especially with the Paper Mario side of things. And I feel like because of this, some Mario games get overlooked and just get clumped up with these kinds of games. Like Mario Golf World Tour is unironically the best Mario Golf game in the series, as it has so much personality and charm and so much content, but people don't really look at it because they just clumped it up with the other Mario sports games that fumble. And I feel like that out of all the Mario games that deserves a lot more attention has to be Mario & Luigi Dream Team. This game released around 2013 as a game to celebrate the year of Luigi, as not only this is going to be the 4th entry in the series, it is also going to be the first one to release on the 3DS. And because of this, Alpha Dream decided to go all out with this one. And man, when I was a kid and I saw this in a Nintendo Direct, I was very excited. I really adore Bowser's Inside Story, and to see a full-on direct follow-up on better hardware made me excited on what this game's going to be about. And once my birthday came out and I finally got the game, I played the everlasting hell out of it. It might have been my most played 3DS game around that time, but I haven't played this game in a really long while, so I'm very curious on how well this game holds up. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the Mushroom Kingdom, where a mysterious blimp shows up at Peach's castle. On it, Brocky shows up from the last game, where he gives out a mysterious little letter, which is an invitation to Pillow Island. Peach decides to come along with some of the Toads and Toadsworth, as well as Mario and Luigi with the latter hanging on to his life. And while they hang out up in the sky trying to wait for their destination, a mysterious pillow then shows up on the blimp, where it's revealed to be a mysterious demon who is attacking everyone on the blimp, with Mario being able to stop him, but once he explodes, it suddenly destroys the blimp. But luckily this was all just in Luigi's dream and not foreshadowing for something, as they were able to land on Pillow Island very safely, with the locals welcoming their new guests, with one of them being Frenchie from the last game. And after you have a fun time going through the tourist attractions like this little quiz game and such, we are finally greeted to the Pillow Castle, which was a place inhabited by the Pillow People, but since it's been long abandoned, it's been converted into a giant hotel. And hey look, Sarla's back as she's taking a vacation on Pillow Island as well. It's a nice reunion for everyone as they look at the sights of this mysterious place. And all of this leads to a small little theater room with the head of the island, Dr. Stoosmore, explains this small little documentary about Pillow Island. And this is when Peach gets very curious on the secrets this island holds, when suddenly Toadsworth and Peach then gets launched into the caverns, with Mario and Luigi pursuing after, and after going through the ancient ruins, they find themselves holding a mysterious artifact. And so when they finally find themselves back at Pillow Castle, they landed right into the museum of Pillow Island, where Luigi's first immediate decision is to take a nap by using the Pillow artifact. And because of this, a mysterious portal then arrives on top of Luigi's head, which is the gateway to an interdimensional plane called the Dream World, where it suddenly sucks Peach into it, with Mario chasing after, and after traveling across the Dream World, he eventually confronts with Luigi. But not necessarily Luigi himself, but his dreamified version called Dreamy Luigi. But for this view, I'm just gonna call him Luigi. But anyway, so eventually Mario confronts this mysterious figure that kidnapped Peach, where they then bury themselves deep inside of the Dream World, with the only clue of their whereabouts is this mysterious light that asks him to break these mysterious shards. Mario then does so, and then suddenly pops out a mysterious person named Dreambert, who was the long-forgotten prince of Pillow Island. who explains to Mario and Luigi on what's going on, as it turns out that Peach was kidnapped by his arch-enemy, Phantasma, an evil Bat King that tried to take over Pillow Island years ago. But the Pillow People was able to defeat him and seal away inside of the Dream World. But he had one foul trick up his sleeve as he destroyed his main artifact, the Dark Stone, which petrified all the Pillow People, turning them into stone. And so it's now up to Mario and Luigi to try and save Peach and stop Phantasma. It's basically your typical Mario and Luigi story as they travel across different kingdoms to try to stop the new guy. And along the way, funny hijinks come along after. I do have to say that there was a couple of funny moments that did give me a chuckle. I really like this moment where Mario and Luigi is walking on this dangerously unstable bridge, and they're trying to figure out what's going on before it was too late as the bridge collapsed upon themselves. Or this moment when Mario and Luigi is trying to save more of the Pillow People, a monster then eats one of them, and when he spits it out, Luigi then realized that he needs to sleep on them because he's the only one that can actually activate the portal, with Starlo giving him everlasting good pep talk. And speaking of which, Starlo reappears again from Bowser's Inside Story, where she still has that cutesy, sassy personality of hers. She still does the occasional teasing towards Luigi in some parts, but once again in Bowser's Inside Story, it's not really that bad. I honestly still don't get the hate for Starlo. Like, have you seen what the Toads say in Mario 64 DS to Luigi? Although I've gotta say, I really love how much Starlo really bounces off in Dream World in this game. With one of the best moments I could think of was this section where they're trying to track Bowser's goons, by discussing something about a embarrassing birthmark on Bowser. But speaking of which, Bowser eventually arrives at Pillow Island after hearing that Peach is taking a vacation here, and he was able to track her down by sniffing her perfume, and ignoring the fact on how unhealthily down bad Bowser is with Peach. Once he arrives in the Dream World, Phantasma now has a different goal instead of just trying to use Peach's power. So now his eyes is on aiding Bowser in his goals to rule the world. So even when Mario and Luigi was able to save Peach, their journey is far from over, as the evil duo's new goal is trying to steal the artifact of Pillow Island called the Dreamstone, which basically can make all their wishes come true. And honestly, I really love this setup. At first it was originally just a simple Peach getting kidnapped thing, but the stakes get a lot higher the more you go through the game. And as for Phantasma, while he's not really as memorable as Fawful from the last game, I do have to say is that he really has a cool design. Really digging the vampire-esque style he's having. And the people you meet along the way in Pillow Island are also very memorable. I love how they expand upon certain elements from last game, like Frenchie being a sentient block. Now you see them a lot more often in Dream Team. Which is honestly very good for Alpha Dream's case, because even during the 3DS days, they have yet to make a sterile version of the Mario and Luigi games. Okay, so jumping all the way to gameplay. So even though that we're jumping all the way up to new hardware, the gameplay is basically identical from the previous Mario and Luigi games, as you run around these different areas trying to solve puzzles by using your Brove moves, while having the occasional laughs with the funny green man. But what is new is that since we're jumping all the way to Nintendo 3DS, we're now using a Circle Pad Pro for this. And I've gotta say, jumping from a D-pad to a full-on analog stick feels very nice. And what's also nice is that it's very hard to get lost in Pillow Island because a lot of the areas is very distinctive on where they are. As if you walk all the way up north, you'll find yourself at Mount Pajamas. But if you go all the way down south, you either find yourselves in the desert or at the beach. And along the way, you can also meet other familiar faces from past Mario and Luigi games, like Kylie Koopa from Partners in Time, and Popple making his grand return from Superstar Saga. But this game gets a lot more interesting when we head to the Dream World, as throughout the game you'll find yourselves with these small little pillows, and every time Luigi sleeps on it, Mario can access the different parts of the Dream World, where the main goals here is try to destroy all the nightmare chunks to free the Pillow People. Some of the sections in the Dream World are important for progression, but for most of them they're completely optional, as it gives you a bunch of short burst challenges to go through. Now the Dream World concept is very similar to traveling inside Bowser's body from the last game, when one half of the game is all in full 3D while the other half is in this side-scrolling way. And I've gotta say, even though that aesthetically wise, traveling within the Dream World is not really as out there or crazy like going inside of Bowser's body, but in terms of actual exploration and such, I honestly say the Dream World is a massive improvement. because there's just so much more stuff to do in these areas compared to Bowser's Inside Story. And since we're traveling within Luigi's dream, he can literally morph anything he wants to and help Mario along the way. Like turning into this giant tree and using his mustache as a slingshot for Mario. Or turning into a giant tornado that leads to very interesting puzzles. And how you control Luigi's dreams is also very hilarious, because on the bottom screen of 3DS, you can see Luigi sleeping in the real world, and if you touch the screen, you can mess around with his face. Like how you control the aforementioned slingshot, you have to pull Luigi's mustache to fling it. And how you create tornadoes, you mess with Luigi's nose to make him sneeze. Or you can rotate the nose multiple times as a drill. And one of the more clever ideas I could think of is that there's this ability where Luigi can literally slow down or fasten up time. They literally use his face as a TV remote, as you can fast forward or slow things down. And later on in the game, you can also take advantage of the environment Luigi is sleeping on to affect stuff in his dreams. Like when you sleep on this float, you could actually affect the gravity in the dream world. Or you can make Luigi cold or hot to affect the weather. They give you so many different versatile abilities in the dream world that it's honestly nuts. And this is not even going into the biggest new ability in this game called the Luigi Noids, where a bunch of Luigis come together as this giant tower that constantly morphs into different shapes. And every time you move around, you can literally plow any enemies in your path. And this form alone has so many different things you can do, like you can, okay. Or there's something like the cone form where you can, okay. But I'm basically trying to say is that this form is very fun. I literally just started moving this giant thing! Alrighty, time to talk about that elephant in the room right now. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, Nintendo tried to be a bit more kid-friendly with the Mario series during the 2010s. Which did cause a way more hit-or-miss lineup for the Mario series going forward. But besides that, this also meant a big sense of accessibility for a lot of gamers. Which is why something like 3D Land and World were a lot more linear and had a fixed camera. And so when they were making Mario & Luigi Dream Team on the 3DS, they decided to go a bit more overboard with the tutorials to reel in a bunch of younger gamers. Although ironically, Mario & Luigi Dream Team has a higher age rating than any other Mario RPG. And because of this, expect hearing this song multiple times at the near beginning of this game. Hey Mario, here's how to save. Hey Mario, here's how to pause. Hey viewer, here's how to subscribe. Although after going through the Snoozing Sandlands, they do ease up at the tutorials. And so every time it shows up, it's mostly just getting a new ability, which I'm honestly just fine per se because the other Mario & Luigi's does this. I just feel like it's a bit more apparent in this game, mostly because there are way more abilities than any other Mario & Luigi game. But what did bother me is this. For those who have played Sonic Unleashed, when you get to the Werehog sections, you would hear this song every time the battle starts. You know, the one that... Well, every time they do a tutorial, I have to hear those same beats every goddamn time. Like, it got to the point where I just end up ironically cheering every time that song plays. Like, I can literally just spam the A button to remove the tutorials quickly. But even then, I would still hear the first bit of the goddamn tutorial music. But besides that, exploring the entirety of Pill Island and its dream world is honestly very fun, probably the best in the series. And this is not even talking about the ever so iconic battle system in this game. Now, ever since Bowser's Inside Story, the battle systems in the Mario & Luigi's game has basically been perfected. So what they added in Dream Team is basically refining from Bowser's Inside Story. Like you're able to store in multiple badges at once, and also every time you level up, you also get a special ranking, and if you do so, you can add one special permanent upgrade. And for the brand new bro abilities in Dream Team, they're basically the same as the other ones in terms of like having funny mechanics for the brothers to use. But unlike previous games where they basically share the same special attacks, in Dream Team, Mario and Luigi have their own unique special abilities. So like Mario is able to use the special cannon attack, while Luigi is able to use the everlasting Fire Flower. And of course, since this is an early 2010s Nintendo game, they also implement brand new motion controls. And surprisingly, it's been implemented very well, as turning the controller left and right felt very natural, so kudos to Alpha Dream. But this is only just talking about the real world battle systems, as once we head to the dream world, the battle system takes a massive shift, where instead of Mario and Luigi attacking the enemies, this time around it's only Mario with Luigi powering him up, which gives this area a completely different feel, as the attacks Mario does in the dream world are way more powerful and over the top compared to the real world. I mean, one simple hammer move and it causes a huge shockwave against the enemies. And even how you counterattack is very different because Mario can actually move around this time around, and the enemies take full advantage with it, especially with the brand new 3D environments Dream Team introduced. And even special attacks here are very bonkers, because instead of having bro moves, you have the Luigi-nary attacks, where Mario joins forces with the Luigi-noids go for over-the-top attacks, like rolling into a giant bowl or forming a giant hammer to beat on enemies. It's all over the top and you feel super powerful. It makes everything feel so satisfying. And then finally, returning from Bowser's Inside Story once again, we have the giant battles. And I really love the big contrast between these and the regular ones because it's not just Luigi going big, but literally everything here is full 3D. And the actual boss battles themselves are a massive step up from Bowser's Inside Story, as I felt like with that one it was a bit too easy. But jumping all the way to Dream Team, they've basically fixed all the issues that Bowser's Inside Story has, as you need to have a lot more thinking on how you should attack them. And I love when you completely weaken the enemy, you can do this one special move to do the final blow, which feels so satisfying to do so. Alrighty, so jumping all the way to the midpoint of Dream Team's story. So as soon as Mario and Luigi climbs all the way up to Mount Pajamas, they were able to confront with Bowser and Tasma. As they begin to play this music across the entirety of Pill Island, which causes everyone to fall asleep. The reason why they're doing this is to power up the Dream Zone by absorbing everyone's dream across the island, with Mario barely escaping from the trance. And so while the brothers are stuck in the dream world for a bit, Bowser and Tasma were able to power up the Dream Zone completely and form their big wish, which so happens to be a giant powerful fortress called Neo Bowser's Castle. And with this, they have a giant laser that they could literally blow up the entirety of Pill Island with. And because of all of this, Toadsworth asked Mario and Luigi to keep Peach safe, and so after going through deep inside the dream world, they realized that Peach has been kidnapped and they were rused by Kamek. And so the only solution they have left is trying to find the legendary Zeke Keeper, who's essentially the bird god of Pill Island. And the only way to try and summon him is to assemble the Ulti Bed, a legendary bed that could access the gateway to the Zeke Keeper's dream world. This is basically a similar plot point from Superstar Saga, where when the Bean Star scatters across the different lands, you can explore the entirety of the Bean Kingdom trying to find them. And this is basically the case in Dream Team as well, because once you have to find that bed, the entirety of Pill Island is completely open. So you can now do stuff like simple side quests or finding the ever-losing Pillow People. You even get to fight some old characters like Pablo, who for some reason does not recognize the brothers in this game, as he's trying to infiltrate this house, but the only thing stopping him is this Wiggler. Which, I'll be honest, I kinda feel bad for him because he's trying to find a peaceful place for a garden, and this burgly nutcase is trying to attack him because he thinks he's an obstacle. But luckily, he gets what he deserves after the boss fight. And after you find and assemble all the bed pieces, you're then leaded to the pre-ultimate location, the Sumnum Woods, which I've gotta say is probably the most beautiful location in any Mario & Luigi game. Which honestly leads me to the presentation of this game. I've gotta say, for a Nintendo 3DS game, this game looks freaking beautiful. I know people aren't really too big on the brand new art direction the series went forward with, but honestly I feel like for Nintendo 3DS, where the main gimmick is full-on 3D, I'd say this style works perfectly well for the Mario & Luigi games. I really love the 2.5D aesthetic they're going for with all the characters being 2D, and the entire environments being full-on 3D. It reminds me of games like Shantae, Half Genie Hero, and especially Klonoa Door to Phantomile, which also had a dreamlike aesthetic. And this is doubly so for the official art in this game, where I love it has an emphasis on the color blue, which not only gives this game a bit of an identity to it, it also fits perfectly for the dreamlike aesthetic. This game as a whole really nails the style, especially in the dream world, as I love the much more surreal feel to it. And of course, since it is a Mario & Luigi game, the soundtrack is also top-notch, and since we're jumping all the way to Nintendo 3DS, this is honestly my favorite soundtrack in the entire Mario & Luigi series. As most music here is so damn catchy, especially the battle theme music. I love Try Try Again. But I really need to emphasize this, once I head to the Summon Woods, it just really clicked with me. And all of this leads to deep inside of the dream world, as we were finally able to awaken the Zeke Keeper. And I really love this guy. At first he seems like the typical godlike creature where he's like all-powerful, wise, high-class and such. But once Dreambird shows up, he completely drops the personality, as it turns out he's actually a dude bro. I'll be completely honest, this is probably the funniest moment in the entire game for me. As I love how he went from this serious figure to just going, "I brought out some takeout, time to get some pizza and dig out." And that doesn't even end there. The Zkeeper is apparently retired after so many years of doing heavy works. The only way for him to budge is if Mario pays him with a lot of coins. And so Dreamart says Mario's willing to budge. And because of this, Mario needs to pay the Dream God a whopping 80 million coins! And so if this deal's said and done, the Zkeeper then flies all the way up to the real world and was able to crash down Bowser's flying castle. And so it's time for Mario and Luigi to proceed. But before you do so, I highly recommend going for all the Pillow People across the land. Because if you're able to rescue all 52 Pillow People, you're able to get the final special attack for Mario. And man, this castle is a massive gauntlet, as Kamek constantly pulls out illusions to teleport you in different rooms and such. You constantly flip-flop from the real world to the dream world because Phantasma is taking advantage of it. And once you finally climb up deep inside of the castle, you're able to confront with Bowser, who is deep asleep inside of this small little barrier. And the only way to wake him up is literally to interfere with his own dreams. And all of this leads is to one final giant battle against Giant Luigi and Giant Bowser. It really does feel like the end is near because you're having one final battle for each of the types of battle systems in this game. As soon as you finish the final giant battle, you immediately go to the final boss in the dream world, where a big twist comes into play where it turns out that Bowser was actually using Phantasma this entire time. Which is a twist I honestly really love, because when it comes to past Mario RPG games when they have an original villain, excluding Bowser's inside story because he was more so a protagonist, they always treat Bowser as more so as a joke villain in some of these games. Like in Thousand Year Door's case, where it was mostly him going on crazy shenanigans to find Peach. Doubly so for something like Superstar Saga, where the entire time he was mostly possessed or having amnesia. So jumping all the way to Dream Team when you expect Phantasma to be the final boss, they completely pull the rug underneath you as Bowser left Phantasma to die. And as for the boss fight itself, it is honestly a really good challenge. I especially love the music Phantasma has in this boss. But alrighty, one jackass down, only one to go. As after going through one final gauntlet, the Mario Brothers finally head to the top of Bowser's castle, where the evil Koopa King has been waiting with the legendary Dreamstone. Bowser was prepared to use it to kill the Mario Brothers, but then Peach and Starlo then shoots a laser at him, causing the Dreamstone to explode, but as a last-ditch effort, Bowser then inhales the star pieces and swallows them whole, which causes them to transform into this powerful being. And thus, the final battle pursues, and honestly, even though that it's not as grand as the last game, I honestly say this is a really good finale for Dream Team. As Dreamy Bowser has so many attacks on his sleeves, it's best to keep you on your toes. Especially since he has an entire army backing him up. And because of this boss fight can get really hectic as hell. And it's a really good way to conclude Dream Team, as once you've done the final blow, Bowser has completely lost, as the brothers were able to escape from the decaying castle with Peach, and thus the entirety of Pill Island has been restored to its former glory. And as for the Dreamstone, well, Dreamer was able to gather up all the remains for the thing and put it in this small little jar. And so with this, the Zkeeper was able to restore the Dreamstone into a giant dream coin. So instead of a magical stone making your wishes come true, you just buy your wishes. And that's basically the ending for Mario & Luigi Dream Team, as the brothers and Peach were able to celebrate their vacation. And for the first time ever in a Mario game, we have actual character development. As while Bowser's trying to fly back to his home in shame, he actually remembers Luigi's name this time, as he was about to call him Green Stash once more, but then we realized that his name is Luigi. Basically meaning that Bowser no longer takes Luigi as a joke and hates him equally as Mario. And that was Mario & Luigi Dream Team, and final verdict? I'd say this game holds about as well as Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. And in some ways, I think I honestly prefer Dream Team over Bowser's Inside Story in some aspects, as I feel like this game expands upon different ideas from that game and basically turns into something new. And while I do feel like some things were done a bit better in Bowser's Inside Story in terms of like pacing and length, I honestly feel like people should really give this game a second chance. As I feel like out of any other Mario game, I feel like this one gets treated the harshest. Because while I do agree with some of the criticisms, like them overusing tutorials a lot in this game, I don't feel like it's cartoonishly aggressive as some people say it is. It was annoying at the beginning parts of the game, but luckily they eventually were able to ease up on them. And what we're left with is probably one of the best RPGs released on a Nintendo 3DS. Especially since this was around the time when Paper Mario was being a bit too experimental. But speaking of which, the Mario series has such a rich history in the RPG genre, as after the big success of Super Mario RPG, we were able to get not only one, but two Mario RPG series released over the years. If you're not playing stuff like the Paper Mario games on home consoles, you're probably going to be familiar with the portable scene with the Mario and Luigi games, where even though they have similar traits like using jumps and hammers for attacks and such, they all have their unique directions to make them feel very different. With one of these having Mario go on these grand epic journeys, finding new people along the way, while the other one is Mario and Luigi going on these wacky adventures and see what happens in the next shenanigans. However, with the Paper Mario side of things, it's a bit more of a different story compared to the Mario and Luigi games, as after the Thousand Year Door, the series kinda had a weird identity crisis with each of the gameplays constantly changing. Which is something that the Mario and Luigi series didn't really have any trappings of, as the gameplay mostly stayed consistent over the years. Even when we jumped all the way to Nintendo 3DS with Dream Team, it's basically the same Mario and Luigi games we were getting from the DS days. And the reason why I'm bringing this all up, because 2 years after Dream Team release, we would not only see another Mario and Luigi game, but also it'll be a crossover with the Paper Mario series. Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. Now I remember the exact same moment I was when I saw this get announced. I was watching Nintendo's E3 showcase on my TV via the PlayStation 3 YouTube thing. Yeah, I always thought that the conference was pretty solid for the most part, with the one thing that was actually carrying it for me was probably the Muppet skit, because I don't know why I always find this very funny. But yeah, I saw the trailer and honestly got very excited for the announcement because I really love Dream Team, as it was one of my most played games on 3DS. But the only thing that was grilling for me when I was younger is the fact that this game released in different countries earlier than the US, so we had to wait until January to get the game. But yeah, as of early 2016, I finally got the game, and I honestly had a really good time with it, but I didn't really like it as much as compared to other Mario and Luigi games. Because compared to something like Dream Team or Bowser's Inside Story, I've replayed those games a lot, but for Paper Jam, I haven't really picked this game up in like 5 years. In between that time, I've noticed a massive shift in terms of fan reception of this game. As now as you bring it up, 9 times out of 10, people will actually despise this game, as people feel like this was a massive disappointment and didn't live up in terms of a crossover. And in terms of a Mario and Luigi game, the best way I could describe it is that it's literally Mario and Luigi on autopilot. And what also didn't help is that this was the final Mario and Luigi game from Alpha Dream, before they shut down a couple years later and leave the series under a nearly decade-long hiatus. And so for their swan song being a very anticlimactic, very safe Mario RPG game, yeah, I can see why people are very upset at this game. And after doing a lot of research, I think I've figured out the reasoning why this game ended up so tepid. And it might actually surprise you for those who don't know. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins in the ever so iconic Peach's castle, where Luigi and Toad were asked to go up to the attic area to inspect a small little draft that's causing a breeze within the castle. However, it's revealed to be a pest control as a scaredy rat arrives to startle Luigi, which accidentally causes him to knock a book off a shelf. However, this is not an ordinary book, as once it begins to open, a spark of light then appears out of it, which causes a herd of paper people to explode out of the book and spread across the Mushroom Kingdom, with one then landing directly inside the basement with Luigi, which so happens to be Papered Peach. With everyone shocked that there are now 2 Princess Peaches, although the Mario Brothers seem to be very fine with it. But yeah, so it turns out that the book Luigi knocked over hold a parallel world of the Mushroom Kingdom, where everyone is made out of paper. And so because of this, there are now 2 Bowsers loose into the world, and I love the fact that their first instinct is literally beating the shit out of each other. So yeah, Mario and Luigi is going to need all the help they get, and eventually they do so when they are able to meet with Paper Mario. Which is a good thing too, because immediately after the Bowsers set out their differences, they do the first thing they both love in life, which is capturing Peach. And that is basically the plot for Paper Jam for the first half, as the main plotline is just trying to go to Bowser's castle to save Peach. That's basically it. And along the way, crazy shenanigans happen, although it's been severely toned down from past games. The only actual interesting thing I could think of is that there's a section where the Mario Brothers has been thrown to jail. There was a section where they climb a mountain. Yeah, I really got nothing. It really makes you wonder what happened with this game development-wise. And after doing a lot of research about this game, I found a very fascinating history about this game's development. So the original idea for Paper Jam is them wanting Mario and Luigi to have a third companion with them, with their pick so happening to be Paper Mario, which led to them having this fascinating story where the Mario Brothers get to explore the Mushroom Kingdom, but also go inside the paper world and meet a lot of original characters. But the problem is that they were way too ambitious with this story, and they couldn't figure out a way to tell a story with the paper aspect in a meaningful way. And so they decided to rework the game from scratch to make a much more simpler story, with the main theming is how the Mario and Luigi characters and the Paper Mario characters contrast from one another. And I'll be honest, I feel like a Mario and Luigi game could get away with very generic Mario themes for the sake of a crossover. Because with something like this, the main appeal is seeing other series interact with traditional Mario elements. Think of it like the Mario & Rabbids game, where in the first game you're pretty much going through traditional Mario settings, but throughout the game you're seeing the Rabbids' chaotic nature causing an effect on the world. And Paper Jam does make an attempt with this because Bowser is sending stuff from the Paper Mario world into the real world, and this would sound cool for any other series crossing over, but the problem is that if you cross over Mario with Mario, you get a Mario story where there's just 2 Marios and 2 Bowsers and 2 Peaches. This doesn't work if you're focusing specifically on the characters that these two have in common. I'll be completely honest, I feel like they were better off restarting this game from scratch and just scrap the whole Paper Mario crossover. Like, if you really can't figure out a way to tell a story with Paper Mario, then I feel like it's best to try something else. Like, why not have Peach join the brothers for a small adventure? I mean, she already has a special ability where she can float in the air for a few seconds. I feel like they could have done something interesting with her, or maybe even another character like Yoshi or something, I don't know. Even stuff like the simple writing in this game is also not as good as the other Mario and Luigi games. There are still plenty of moments in this game where it's still funny, don't get me wrong, but I feel like this game could have used a lot more slapstick comedy like the original games, as most of the jokes in this game can pretty much sums up as them making fun of traditional Mario tropes. We even got a Year of Luigi mentioned by Starlo. Oh yeah, I think I should really talk about Starlo right now. Yeah, I mentioned my Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team video that I don't really get the hate for Starlo per se. Like, I personally find her as like a decent companion for the Mario Brothers to hang out with. But I always get comments saying that Paper Jam is when Starla is at its worst, as she constantly slanders Luigi and such, and yeah, I'm sorry to say, but I still think the hate for Starla has been a bit overblown over the years. Like, I did notice she makes a lot more snarky remarks toward Luigi, but the actual comments she makes towards Luigi makes her more so just a bit wisecracking, with the insults she does do have the same impact of Sonic calling Knuckles a knucklehead. And even then, she doesn't really bust Luigi's chops that much in this game at all. I only recall only 4 times she actually does so. And even when she does it, I never really got the impression that Starlo hated Luigi. It's not like she's literally calling Luigi offensive slurs or anything. And I'll be honest, I'm honestly kind of fine with Starlo this way, because I feel like she would have been just a really bland companion if she was just like this overly nice companion for the Mario Brothers to hang out with. And plus, Starlo's not even the only character that's making fun of Luigi in this game. Which also brings up another criticism I've noticed about Paper Jam, which is that people aren't really very happy of Luigi being the butt of the joke for a lot of characters in this game. But personally, I didn't really mind it to say, I didn't really think about it too much. 80% of the jokes in Superstar Saga and Partners in Time was literally at Luigi's expense. So stuff like this is literally just another Tuesday with these games. So yeah, I didn't really mind these jokes per se, I didn't laugh at it, but I didn't really roll my eyes either. They were just there. But I will say, there are still a few moments in this game where it did give me a good chuckle. I did get a good chuckle when Mario and Luigi starts going googly eye when they saw 2 Princess Peaches. I laughed when the Mario Brothers and Starlo were just messing around with this paper Goomba. And surprisingly, the most memorable moments in this game is when Luigi gets to interact with Paper Mario, as literally Luigi's first instincts when he sees him is literally hugging him. And later on in the game, when Luigi was devastated after realizing he lost the book, I like how Paper Mario folds himself into a small little tissue to have him wipe his tears away. So yeah, even though that there isn't a lot of funny moments in this game, I still think when the moments do shine, they really do shine. Alrighty, so jumping all the way to gameplay, yeah, it's basically the same from the previous games. You basically run around, do action commands and such. It's what you expect from a Mario and Luigi game, but this time around, Paper Mario is included with the brothers. And just like Mario and Luigi, he is designated to a certain button. And not just that, but there's also a button in this game now where everyone can jump at the same time and do this slight little hover move. And not just that, but also if you hold it down a bit, the trio will actually run around the areas this time as well. Which makes this game feel go a lot more faster than previous Mario and Luigi games. Which is a good thing too, because you really don't do a lot around the overworld in this game. You do still unlock the ever so iconic bro moves, although this time it's called the trio moves, with one of them giving you a way more powerful hammer slam. The second one is essentially a grapple move, as you can grab onto stuff from long distance. And the drill move is unironically probably the best time they actually use the drill move in a Mario and Luigi game, as you can climb on walls with this ability and do a small little charge that does lead to very interesting platformings. But in terms of actual exploration, this game is a bit more on the barren side, as all you're pretty much just trying to do with these areas is trying to get to your next destination. Which I felt it the most with stuff like the grasslands and especially the desert. But I feel like this game does get better over time, especially when we head to the forest area, because with this area, your main objective is trying to feed this hungry Wiggler fruit. That way you can clear the path that was caused by Paper Kamek. Which, I'll be honest, this kinda gave me war flashbacks of Sticker Star. The last time Kamek went to a forest with a Wiggler, he literally left him as a severed head. Although I've got to say, the fake Wiggler death scene actually did get me. Because the way the Paragroombas just flies all the way down to pick Wiggler up and send him up in the sky, I don't know why, that actually got me. But yeah, in terms of actual exploration, this game is a bit more on the minimum side. That is because in Paper Jam, they have a larger focus on this small little mission structure. As Paper Jam is also the grand debut of Toadette in a Mario and Luigi game, who helps out the brothers along the way by giving them special tools to defeat Bowser with. But in order to make these tools, she's going to need a lot of helping hands, so throughout the game, you'll be gathering up various paper toads across the Mushroom Kingdom, who are completely uneasy about the new world they are in. So in order to find them, you need to go into the small little building with a bunch of Lakitus, where they'll give you a bunch of missions to do. Which are basically these small little mini-games where you have to either chase them down and such by tackling them. Honestly, when I first went into this game, I was actually dreading these parts because I thought they were going to be overly long and such. But no, a lot of these only last about like 3 or 4 minutes long. And I feel very incentive of doing a lot of these because you get a lot of great rewards if you actually do them all. Not all of them are great, I feel like the later ones do kind of drag a bit, especially with the Snowy Mountain area. The one thing I'm actually very grateful though is that you can actually do them all at once, so at the near end of the game when I was trying to do the rest of them, all it was just one simple trip at Lakitu's place and I was able to get them all in one swoop. Which is honestly very nice because I was worried that you have to go through every single individual Lakitu house just to get them all. Because my lord, if they actually do that, I would probably be singing a different tune. Especially later on in this game where you need to find these toads. But besides those, there's also a few other missions that are going to be mandatory throughout the game as well, like the elusive Nabbit chasing sections. So in previous games, you'll have yourselves with these special bro attacks. And how you unlock them depends on which game you're on. With Superstar Saga, you pretty much learn them on the fly. But in Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team, how you unlock these things is by collecting all the attack pieces. But jumping all the way to Paper Jam, you actually get your first ever bro attacks immediately when you start the game. That is because the rest of the bro attacks has been completely stolen by Nabbit. And you unlock even more of these abilities once you're able to capture them by taking back all your stuff. Which honestly I really like because I always adore Nabbit as a character. I like how much of a anti-hero he is somewhat. Like, you have no idea what side he's on. Like, he didn't steal the attack pieces because he was working with Bowser or anything, he's just a thief. Because at the near end of the game, when you're trying to get your final stuff, you actually get to fight Nabbit, and then suddenly he fights with you, and then it's go back and forth like, what side is this guy on?
Let's go!
But alright, so jumping all the way to the battle system. So just like the overall in this game, there's really not that much to talk about with the battle system in this game, because if you really played one of the Mario and Luigi games, you'd probably be familiar with this game. With the only big difference is that you now have 3 characters to control on the field, instead of just 2. With Paper Mario probably being one of the most unique playable characters in the series, as he basically functions similarly to the brothers, but this time around when he jumps, he can do this small little hover move, which does lead to unique counters against enemies, plus, it'll give you a lot more leg room when you're controlling 3 characters at once. And also, if you think 3 characters is a bit too much, they added a small little assist mode that shows you who's about to get attacked, which is very useful because surprisingly at the near end of the game, attacks in this game could be a bit overwhelming, so I actually recommend using this if you're having trouble. But as for other things Paper Mario can do, similar to something like Geno in Super Mario RPG, he's essentially the glass cannon of the RPG characters, where he has very effective attacks, but he's very weak defense-wise. So you'll be using this special copy block that's essentially a shield for Paper Mario. And not just that, but also his attacks and hammers will be a lot more powerful than doing it singly. With the only drawback is that you need to waste 1 turn to max out Mario's copy ability. So it's basically a good balance if you want to be safe and sorry to copy Mario, or if you want to risk it and do a special attack. And as for the bro moves, well, a lot of them gets carried over from Dream Team, with some of them being a bit adjusted like the Drop Chopper, which originally used motion controls, but jumping to Paper Jam, you're now using just a simple analog stick. And with these, you're mostly going to be controlling them as Mario and Luigi, but with Paper Mario, this is when the trio attacks come into play, which are way more over the top compared to the bro attacks, as Paper Mario wields in a giant hammer and smash them all into small little paper pieces, and you basically have to attack them, which does so much damage. And just like the Luiginary attacks from Dream Team, these are really fun to master. I especially love the Trio Whirlwind and the Shuriken moves, as these feel so satisfying when you pull it off. And what is also new to this game are the brand new Power Cards, which are basically replacements of badges from previous games. But they pretty much work kind of similar, where the brothers need to attack the enemies to fill up this gauge. With the more points they get, the more they can activate a battle card, which can do various things like heal them, do damage against enemies and such, or you can put a little curse on the enemies to get special rewards like an EXP boost or something. Honestly, I think this might be a hot take, but I actually kind of prefer the battle cards over the original badge system, as there are so many cards you can pretty much strategize around. And this is not even talking about the special amiibo ability, which allows you to unlock even rarer cards with special renders of each character. So yeah, even though the actual themings of this game has been simplified from past games, at the very least they still evolved the battle system in very interesting ways. With the only actual gripes I can think of with this system, is that since we're having an overly simple Mario story for Paper Jam, that means the enemies in this game are a bit on the simple side, but I will give credit when credit's due, is that functionally wise, I do feel like the paper enemies in this game does spice up the battle system a lot in this game, because they aren't really carbon copies of their real-world counterpart, as a lot of times they'll pretty much float around their bodies and such, which does lead to very interesting attacks. And it's really cool seeing characters like King Boo and King Baba make their big debut in a Mario RPG. But as for the other thing I need to talk about is how you level up in this game. So every time you level up in the previous Mario and Luigi games, you'll have this special little bonus roulette. And with this, you can add a few little more points to your stats, like having more health, throw points, or power. But jumping all the way to Paper Jam, that has been completely omitted, which honestly confused me more than anything. But at the very least, they do make it up a bit by giving you way more beans than usual. And also, they give you way more useful permanent upgrades in the ranking system, like Paper Mario being able to have 10 copies at once instead of just 6, or having one of the brothers' bro point requirements being cut in half, which honestly I really do like because it gives this game a lot more of a different strategy than previous Mario and Luigi games, so I will give credit to that. So of course, since Bowser's Inside Story did it and Dream Team did it, obviously Paper Jam would follow suit with a special type of battle system. This time being the Paper Craft battle, and honestly these aren't really that bad. For every single one of these things, you operate with a very unique one with their own special traits. Like Mario being the most basic ones, but Papercraft Luigi has a special hammer, and Papercraft Peach has a special parasol that can hover in the air for a bit. And lastly, there is Papercraft Yoshi, and obviously since it's Yoshi, this is easily the best one as he's able to use his tongue to latch onto enemies or poles. Honestly, at first I wasn't really digging at this, but the more stages within the Papercraft system, the more better it gets in my opinion. Okay, so jumping all the way to the half point in this game's story, after going through a wild goose chase of going into Bowser's castle, the trio were able to rescue the two princesses. And along the way, they were able to defeat both Bowser Jr.'s. But unfortunately for the trio, this was a severe mistake, because now there are two angry fathers up in their tail for having their sons getting hurt. And I'll be honest, this is probably unironically one of the best scenes in this game for me, because I like how the Bowsers drop the whole evil act and just care about their son's well-being. I don't know, I just like the fact that despite Bowser being the biggest bad guy in the Mario series, he's still unironically a really good father. So yeah, with the trio making their escape with the two princesses, Bowser unleashes their greatest plan, which is converting the entirety of the castle into a giant hovercraft called Neo Bowser's Castle. It's literally the same name from Dream Team. So yeah, Bowser's taking advantage of cardboard technology, and his first move is immediately blowing up Peach's castle. So now the Mario Brothers need to figure out a way to climb all the way back up to Bowser's castle again. Which basically means another wild goose chase around different areas you've been through before, just so you can head to the top of Mount Burr. And yeah, that's about it. You basically go through different toad missions and do some bosses and such. There aren't really that much of an objective of exploring the area similar to Superstar Saga or Dream Team. There are certain quests you should do, like the elusive Nabbit missions I mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's basically it. You just climb a bit higher through the same mountain you've been through before, and you're immediately at the end point of this game. Which really emphasized the fact on just how much this game just goes through autopilot, like, you're really just going through the motions in Paper Jam. And as for the presentation of this game, it is honestly very solid for the most part. Like, the art style is mostly the same from Dream Team, with the only big difference I've noticed is that the camera angle in Paper Jam has been lowered a bit, so you get to see more of Mario and Luigi's face. Which does make the characters a lot more expressive compared to Dream Team because of it. And as for the paper characters in this game, they are surprisingly really well animated. Especially with Paper Mario, like, one of the most entertaining parts of this game in my opinion, is just seeing Paper Mario just move around and use his paper abilities in very funny ways. And as for stuff like the environments, well, they look pretty good for the most part, appealing wise, but aesthetically and such, yeah, it does lean too much on the traditional Mario style you would be familiar with other games. With the most appealing part of this game is easily Mount Burr, but I think that's just part of my brain who just really loves snowy themes, so. But on a much more positive note, I do feel like the music in this game is also really good. I'm not even kidding when I say is that the simple grass theme in this game got stuck in my head countless times over the years. It is such a catchy song, I recommend hearing it. Even the battle music in this game is also very good. I like how at the very beginning of this game, it's basically a remix of Superstar Saga's battle, which is such a really cool callback. And as for stuff like the boss theme music and such, they really fit the tone very well, especially when we head to the end point of this game. As after facing off Nabbit, the two Kameks for the very last time, we then face off in one big final paper craft battle, and last but not least, we then face off with every single Koopaling, which I've gotta say is probably the most brutal part in this game because it's essentially an endurance test, as each of the Koopaling boss fights have their unique gimmicks, so I highly recommend stocking up on items for this one. But when it's all said and done, it's time for the final battle, as we have two Marios, two Bowsers, and one Green Stash. And man, this final battle is surprisingly really good. So for the first phase, you're basically duking out with two Bowsers, as you try to keep on your toes as they try to attack you with fire breaths. But when phase 2 rolls out is when this boss gets really good. For one, that is unironically a really cool armor Bowser's wearing. They shouldn't have gone this hard on making cardboard look cool, but they did. And second, this is a really good challenging boss, as you can't just simply plow all your strongest attacks instantly, because you need to carve through the armor first to do so. Because if you just do your trio attacks right now, Bowser will try to intervene with his own special trio moves, meaning that Bowser has even more opportunities to try and attack the players. And this is another reason why I recommend going deeper into the battle cards, because if you do enough working and save enough coins, you can get a special card that levels down Bowser's stats, which is a really cool reward if you really look deeper inside of the game's mechanics. But when everything is said and done and you do that ever-elusive final blow or fumble the attacks and still kill him, the two Bowsers finally goes down, with the real one falling right out of his castle and fall really, really far into the Mushroom Kingdom, with the trio sealing away Paper Bowser in the world that you came from. The entirety of the Mushroom Kingdom has been saved, with everyone having a celebration with one big parade. And along the way, they send all the paper creatures back for where they belong. and ending things off with Peach and Mario saying goodbye to their paper counterparts. As suddenly Bowser then returns to attack Peach's castle once more, meaning that everything has gone back to normal, concluding Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. Okay, so, yeah, that was definitely a game. As for my final verdict of Paper Jam, I personally thought this game was just okay. Like, I don't think this game is aggressively terrible as some people say it is. It's just a very harmless Mario RPG game. But this is definitely the weakest Mario and Luigi game in the series. As nothing really interesting happens in this game, as I mentioned earlier, this game just really plays on autopilot. Like, compared to Dream Team, despite the constant shit this game gets because of its tutorials, at the very least, that game gives you way more stuff to do in that game. Way bigger areas to explore with their unique set pieces. Way more interesting characters, which is an effective blend between the new and old. Way more content in this game as there's so many things you can do within this game. And overall, just felt like a remnant of a Mario game we used to get during the 2000s. And compare all this to Paper Jam, where yes, I do have to agree that the pacing in this game is way better than Dream Team, but despite that, they really don't give you that much to do within this game. So it doesn't really matter how well the pacing is compared to Dream Team, because it's still very barren in comparison. As this is basically a game that suffered from severe development issues of trying to fit in a concept that didn't really work out so well, and so to compensate, they try to make it overly safe so they can have enough time to get this game released during the Christmas seasons. But not to say that everything in this game is bad, because there are a few things I really do like about this game. Like, I do feel like the battle system in this game is the most polished in the series. Pit Mario, even though that he's basically here in name only, I do feel like functionally he is a really good addition to this game. And I really love the battle card mechanics, as it's a nice evolution of the original badge system in past games. So I do understand why some people would still like this game, because at the end of the day, it's still a Mario & Luigi game, and Mario & Luigi games are very fun. But at the same time, I do understand why a lot of people dislike this game, because this game just feels very barren compared to other Mario & Luigi games. But I feel like the most egregious part of this game is not necessarily the game's fault per se, but it's the fact that this was the final game from Alpha Dream. As after releasing the 2 remakes and the studio shutting down, we wouldn't see another Mario & Luigi game for nearly 9 years. But luckily by the time I'm making this video, we're only 2 weeks away of finally ending this 9-year-long hiatus. And I'm also glad to celebrate this by playing through every single Mario & Luigi game in the series so far. Even with Paper Jam, despite me being overly critical with this game, I still had a somewhat good time replaying this game for the first time in years. And if you're very curious on Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, then I also recommend trying it out. It's still a pretty solid game, even if it's a lot barren compared to other Mario & Luigi games. I also highly recommend trying out the soundtrack in this game, as it's also very good. You even get a nifty cameo with Paper Luigi in the jukebox menu in this game. The last 13 months has been an excellent time if you've been a Mario fan, as ever since October of last year, we would get non-stop very interesting Mario games released throughout. From very weird and interesting games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder to new experiments like Princess Peach Showtime. And just overall having a good time with stuff like Mario vs. Donkey Kong and Super Mario Party Jamboree. And to top it all off, it's been nearly a whole year since Nintendo revived the entire Mario RPG side, as we were able to get full-on remakes of Super Mario RPG on the SNES, and then a freaking half a year later, we will get a full remake of Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. And now to end things off with this great Mario streak, Nintendo then would bring back one of Mario's most cherished RPG series of all time period. And no, this is not just a remake, but a full brand new game. Mario and Luigi Brothership. Out of all the Mario RPG games Nintendo released this past year, Brothership was definitely the one I was hyped the most for, as this was the first new Mario & Luigi game after 9 years. And my lord, the last entry in the release was freaking Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. But yeah, after the lukewarm reception of this game, Alpha Dream would then release a couple of Mario & Luigi remakes, which were pretty solid for the most part, but the problem was that they released it on the Nintendo 3DS while the Nintendo Switch was recently new. So literally everyone's minds were focused on the Nintendo Switch. With Superstar Saga, at the very least, it released very early during the Nintendo Switch's life, but it was when they released Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story when things were problematic. And regardless on how much you feel about this game's quality, this game had no purpose releasing on the Nintendo 3DS. as it released 2 years after the Nintendo Switch was on the market. And because of that, and also was competing with another Mario game, this game sold terrible. And it's still considered as one of Mario's worst selling games of all time period. And so after this game released, a few months later, Alpha dreamed the original studio would file for bankruptcy, leaving the Mario & Luigi series in purgatory. So for the past 5 years, the only glimmers of hope we would get was probably just Nintendo would then file a trademark with Mario & Luigi or something, and nothing really come with that. So with all of this in mind, it makes the actual reveal of that new Mario & Luigi game feel so very surreal. But it did leave everyone with one final question though. Who are the new Mario & Luigi developers? Which is a question everyone was speculating for a few months until last month we would finally get our answer, as the new Mario & Luigi developers is a studio named Acquire. Never really heard about this studio before until I looked up their resume, and yeah, I'm familiar with their work, as they were the developers of Octopath Traveler, which was a cute little RPG I played back in 2018. But I was honestly very excited regardless on who was making it. However, despite that, this is still a Mario & Luigi game by a brand new studio, so of course there's going to be a lot of growing pains because of this. And while the majority of critics do really like this game, I've seen a good amount of people that are a bit more mixed with this game, with one of the big examples being, unsurprisingly, from IGN. Now personally, I never really took IGN reviews so seriously ever since 2008, but I feel like the reaction people give this review has been a bit overblown. Like, keep in mind, Mario & Luigi Brothership has been generally well received, and in fact has a 78 on Metacritic, which is nearly an 8 out of 10 game. But I've seen people keep dragging this on and on about IGN giving this a mixed review, despite most other journalists giving a positive score. So it's like that one-off review from someone that probably didn't really care about the Mario series was the only one that was actually valid. But despite that, that never really dampened my excitement for this game because, again, I never really take game reviews seriously, as I mostly have to try it for myself to get my full opinion on. And well, today is the day as I finally got the game on my own hands, which is still very surreal for me. Like, keep in mind, with the last Mario & Luigi game, I got it when I was still in freaking middle school. But I've been playing this game for almost a week now, and I've beaten it already and currently doing my second playthrough now, and I've gotta say, if you're a big fan of the Mario RPG games, especially Mario & Luigi, you're definitely gonna be having a good time with this. But for me, I have a lot of things to say about this game. A lot of great, a lot of good, a bit of eh. But before we start, I'm gonna have a big heads up on this video. So since this game is recently new, I'm gonna give out a big old spoiler warning for this video. As just like my previous Mario & Luigi videos, this is going to be divided into several parts. I'm going to be very light on spoilers for the first half of the video, just really talking about stuff that they showed in trailers. So if you want to go through this game completely blind, then skip off this video. But before you do so, I recommend subscribing and such. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the story begins on a peaceful day at the Mushroom Kingdom, where Luigi's being attacked by a swarm of bees, where he almost plummets to his doom before Mario was able to catch him, where suddenly the brothers' hands begin to glow as it shoots out multiple portals up in the sky, which begins to swallow them, Princess Peach, a group of toads, and even Bowser and his minions. Mario tries to catch up to Luigi before they were separated inside of the portal, and when he wakes up, he finds himself stranded on a mysterious island. And while he explores, he immediately starts hallucinating Luigi as he tries to find his brother. They were only separated for 3 minutes and Mario's already hallucinating. But luckily it doesn't take him that long to find Luigi, as eventually he finds him on a mysterious boat island, which is a place inhabited by 2 other people, this little gardener named Connie, who's in charge of protecting this mysterious tree, as well as Snoutlet, a mysterious little flying creature who looks like a pig but states that he is not a pig. And it turns out is that when Mario and Luigi were sucked into the portal, they landed directly into the world of Concordia, or at the very least what's left of it. As long ago, this place used to be one big continent, until one day the centerpiece of the land, called the Unitree, was destroyed, shattering the entirety of the land, causing them to drift into small islands. And ever since, Connie and Snoutlet were growing this brand new Unitree, so they could hopefully return everything back to normal. And so, it's now up to Mario and Luigi to travel across different parts of the sea and help Snoutlet and Connie accomplish their mission. The story of this game at first is very straightforward, as it's basically the brothers trying to figure out a way to go back to the Mushroom Kingdom. And along the way, they'll meet these weird and quirky characters that'll probably help them on their quest. But the more you progress through the game and the more characters you'll meet, the more the story gets more and more interesting. Like with Connie, for example, I was actually surprised how much of a big role she does have in this game. As even though she doesn't really travel that much compared to Snoutlet, the game's story focuses a lot on Connie and her past with her former mentor. As throughout the game, she'll travel across different parts of the island where she reminisces on her past, as they both had a mother and daughter type of relationship. And as for Snoutlet, well, in this game he's basically the equivalent of Starlo in Stuffwell, where he travels with Mario and Luigi to show him the ropes of this land. Honestly, at first I didn't really think too much about Snoutlet, but honestly, the more I played through the game, the more he actually grew on me. At first I was a bit worried because with the marketing in this game, they really forced the fact of the joke about him not being a pig. And while he does have a lot of pig jokes, in fact he does a lot of puns, I surprisingly really liked it because it had a little bit of a sense of like a dad joke. And I also really love how well he's animated. I like his little bounce he does, like, I mean, look at that, it's adorable. He's definitely on par with Starla as a really good companion for the Mario Brothers. And speaking of which, she does make a surprise return as well, this time being Peach's best friend in this game, which honestly fits really well, especially considering the fact on what they could do together in past games. And even though she's not the Mario Brothers companion this time around, she's still a prominent character in this game, surprisingly. And now this is the part of the video where I talk about why people are overreacting about Starla's behavior. Okay, so for those who don't know, for the past few videos, I always talk about small segments about, like, why I don't really get the hate for Starlo. As over the years, she became a very controversial character in the series. Mostly because of the fact that she usually jabs Luigi a lot in these games. And after playing through literally the entire series within 5 months, I still think people are overreacting a bit about Starlo. I mean, hell, in this game, when Starlo arrives on the ship-shaped island, Luigi is happy to see her and vice versa. And the only actual nickname Starlo calls Luigi is just Mario's brother. I also can't really say that's a tease, that's just more so a nickname because that's what Luigi basically is, Mario's brother. And besides that, she does make one more joke about Luigi, but that's basically it. And even then, I can't really say it's out of resentment, because deep down, Starlo does care for Luigi's well-being. And even if she does make a few jokes on Luigi, it's mostly a sense of like, you know how you're in like a friend group and you do occasional teasing from one another? It's basically like that, with all the jokes she does do with Luigi never really offends him. With the only time where her jokes actually did went too far, was the one where it did actually hurt Luigi's feelings. And even then, Mario did call her out on it, and she did feel bad afterwards. But okay, I'm going a bit too off topic, so yeah, Peach and Starlo are companions this time around, with the two having a very interesting role in Brothership, as they form a little bit of alliance with these group of kids called the Idol, who will help the Mario Brothers on their big quest to save Concordia, as it's all currently in danger by the evil Saga and his minions, the Extension Corps. And I've gotta say, I really love the contrast between him and his goons, as Lord Saga has a very intimidating presence with him, even more so than any other Mario and Luigi villain, who literally views everyone as a joke, even his own minions, who can't even remember their own names. And compare this to the Extension Corps, who are extremely goofy characters that really fit at home with the Mario and Luigi cast. I especially love this bit when there's this mini plot of trying to set up a wedding, and one of the goons try to trick them by giving them these fake ingredients, while having this stupid Team Rocket-ass disguise. Which is another thing about this game, just like the other Mario and Luigi games, this game is full of great chuckles. Especially with Luigi, I love every time when you launch yourself into a different island, he lands in some misfortunate way. But I think the funniest joke I could think of with Luigi is that during the section where you're disguising yourselves to get into Bowser's fortress, the brothers were offered free refreshments with Luigi just taking off his disguise to enjoy the drink, and that reaction the Koopa makes really sells it for me. Now, is this game Superstar Saga and Partners in Time levels of funny? Not really, because I feel like with this game, it doesn't really have that much of a zany premise compared to other Mario and Luigi games, but I feel like it makes up for it by telling a really meaningful story, as this game focuses a lot more on the characters, even more so than any other Mario RPG game. I remember this one section when Peach meets up with the idols for the first time. They discover that Dory has arrived in Concordia injured, and so for a few minutes they try to focus on trying to find medicine for this poor creature. And later on in the game, when the brothers find themselves in Bowser's fortress, there's this whole side plot of Bowser Jr. befriending a Concordian named Buddy. With the big conflict being is that since Bowser Jr. is the bad guy and Buddy wants to do good, he occasionally helps the Mario Brothers, which causes a bit of a rupture in their relationship. Now, of course, at first Bowser Jr. probably viewed Buddy as like, a kid that looks up to him and thinks he's the coolest person. In a similar way how Bowser Jr. views his own dad, as he thinks he's the coolest person. But thanks to Kamek, who basically mentors him throughout this entire game, Bowser Jr. would solely genuinely care for Buddy. And so by the end, Bowser Jr. considered Buddy as a genuine friend to him. And even though that doesn't sound that interesting, it does add up to the theming of Brothership, which is connections. Which is honestly a really clever idea to make every single character in this game literal plugins, because you're literally plugging in, like connecting things. And I like how, not going into spoilers, the main antagonist's plan is to disconnect everyone from each other. And I really love Zakit's design, as he's literally this sentient wire cutter. And his actual plans in the game is really evil the more you think about it, because he has this special substance called glum. And when someone's affected by it, it fills them up with severe hatred for their friends and family. He's literally forcing people to distance themselves from their loved ones, which is outlandishly cruel. So yeah, the stakes are very high for the brothers this time around. Okie dokie, jumping all the way to gameplay. So the last original Mario & Luigi game came out in 2015 with Paper Jam. So jumping all the way to Brothership, there's a full 9-year gap, as well as a brand new studio working on this. And on the surface level, it's moderately the same as the other Mario & Luigi games, as the brothers travel across these different parts of the area while working together by doing special bro moves to solve certain puzzles. But it's when you actually play you can feel the difference. Some of the changes I do really like, while some I'm a bit more 50-50 on. But starting with the positives, Mario controls very smoothly in the overworld in this game, as he has a really good walking pace and his jumps feel very stretchy and bouncy. Same thing when you do a hammer swing as well, but this time around you actually use the X button and Luigi Y to use your hammers. Which is an idea I really like, because it still keeps the fundamentals of Mario and Luigi being controlled by a certain button. Now instead of being controlled by one button, it's now two. And as for bro moves, well, you do still toggle them like in previous games, but instead of it being the R button, you're able to select them with the right stick, which allows you to select certain bro moves for the brothers to do so. Now the selection is fairly limited compared to other Mario & Luigi games. Like, the only actual returning ones is probably the spin jump, which is reimagined as the UFO move, which basically works the same thing, but you can actually use it as a vacuum to suck up coins and grates. The bro ball returns from Partners in Time as well, but this works drastically different in comparison to that game, as you use it to try and fit through tight corners similar to the Mini Mario move, and later on in the game you basically unlock Sonic's Spin Dash, as you use it to roll super fast, and I'm not kidding, late in the game when you're using it for an obstacle course, I literally did the Sonic Adventure approach and abused the Spin Dash. And the funniest thing too, I didn't even think the developers intended for you to use it. I was literally thinking outside the box with that one. And then finally we have the Fire and Ice abilities, as Mario was able to don the Powerful Flowers. And yeah, it's basically what you expect. Mario is able to use the Fire Flower and Luigi's able to use the Ice Flower. Overall, the bro move selection this time around is pretty good. The only thing I do find a bit weird though is that they didn't include one where it has one of the brothers going underground like in past games. Meaning that this is the first Mario & Luigi game where you don't find the beans underground. But they still return in this game and they work exactly like the past games, where they're basically stat boosts. Alrighty, so I'm saving the biggest change for last, as this one is probably one of the most talkative points when it comes to Brothership. And it's all set and focused on Luigi himself, as this game has him in a different role compared to the last games, as he usually was the much more timid brother, who often chickens out on the adventure, but in Brothership he kind of plays much more as the smart one of the group, as he always tries to think outside the box on how to proceed. And this new mechanic is called Luigi Logic, and personally I'm a bit more 50-50 on. On one hand, I do like the idea of having Mario and Luigi work together to do certain puzzles. I remember with one of the first puzzles, you play hot potato with the various toads you find on this island. But on the other hand, it does lead to Luigi being very simplified in this game, as literally all of his moves are now automatic, including jumping on platforms. Now this is the part I wasn't really too big on, because I feel like it kind of loses the appeal of past Mario & Luigi games. as it veers away from feeling like you're controlling the brothers as one entity to just controlling as Mario. But I will say, besides that, the new ideas they have for Luigi in this game aren't bad at all. As I like how this mechanic really emphasizes Mario and Luigi working together. It does feel a bit different from past games, but at the end of the day it does feel like a Mario and Luigi game. It's just that the gameplay feels more so like a reimagining in a way. In a way, it's kind of like going from the original Donkey Kong Country games on Super Nintendo to Retro Studios' Donkey Kong Country Return games, where they're both similar and different at the same time in very interesting ways. Doubly so on how this game is structured. So of course with this game, the main theme of it is sailing across the seas. And so for the very first time since Partners in Time, the ship-shaped island is essentially your hub world. As it's a nice cozy place where you can buy stuff, talk to the NPCs, and just enjoy the sights. Right before you get launched out of the cannon into the next island. And there's so many wide range variety of islands to explore. One of the first few islands you go through has a very focuses on arts and crafts. One of the islands is basically one big old carnival, where the whole gimmick is that it's one big maze you have to go through. Where once you head to the main center, you can actually control the maze and try to figure out where you have to go. And this is going to be a weird comparison, but some of these islands weirdly reminds me of Paper Mario Color Splash in a way. Where just like in that game, some of the islands tell a bit of a mini story, like in one of them, you're traveling through this hybrid island that's a mix of a volcano area and an ice land, where the two types of people are having a big conflict on who has the best food, with Mario, Luigi, and Snowlet being the judges, and when they try to make peace by saying it's a tie, it causes even more conflict as they decide to try and make it better so they can beat the other side. But I think one of my personal favorite islands has to be the one from Boldfish. As in this area, the entire town is in conflict as their most precious treasure has been stolen, and they're all pinning the blame on this recently new couple. And so it's now up to Mario and Luigi to try and clear their names, as you talk to the local residents and even sneaking down to the jail cell. And for another story, you're trying to storm away this giant office building, as it's a location where a bunch of people are getting kidnapped to. But in order to do so, you need to use either Luigi or Peach as bait, with the Green Plumber being considered as hard mode, as you'll be basically playing through the whole thing alone. And then there's the lighthouses, which basically works in a way kind of like a Zelda dungeon, as these are the main centerpieces of Concordia, and that's where the big bad bosses live, as you try to find the various keys across the caverns to try and reach the top of the lighthouse. It's all really good stuff. However, I do have one big criticism with Brothership's structure. As well, I did mention that you're going through different islands non-stop. I will say, for the beginning parts of this game, Brothership will definitely feel slow for a lot of people, as they really want to teach you every single thing that this game could do before they could really let you out in the world. And so because of that, the plot of this game doesn't really go forward until like 3 hours into the game. But I'd say maybe around when you meet the idol when the game actually picks up, for me personally. I don't really know, man. I feel like my opinion would be a bit different from yours, because I've known friends who state that the game picks up for them later on in the game. And so I feel like the beginning parts of this game alone is why people have a bit of a sour spot with Brothership. But at the very least, Brothership does keep their fast forward feature from Paper Jam, which does help with some of the cutscenes that drags on a bit. And let's get this out of the way, even though this game does pick up later on, that is still not a good thing, because the fact that people have to encourage people to keep going to see if the game gets better for them really shows that they really need to adjust the first areas of the game. Because especially with an RPG, first impressions is everything, as you're going to be playing through hours, and I mean hours of this game. As Brothership is a really beefy game. In fact, I think this is probably the longest Mario RPG game ever, especially when you do the various side quests in this game. Oh yes, they include side quests. But don't worry, most of these aren't necessarily long. In fact, they're only like 10 minutes long. They're mostly there just to add more content into this game, plus you get really good rewards if you do so. And occasionally, some of the missions is basically characters just chilling and just talking about each other, with Starla bringing up the point that her appearance right now is only temporary, as her real form is an 8-headed beauty according to her, which, I'll be honest, I do not even want to imagine what a biblically accurate Starla would look like. And it makes me wonder on what other stuff she's hiding from everyone. Look at that cutie yellowy smile she has. What is she hiding? Now, jumping all the way to the ever so iconic battle system. Just like in the overworld, the battle system here is a bit of an evolution of the original gameplay style, as you're still bopping on enemies and use your hammers and such. But now this game has a greater focus on Mario and Luigi working together, as even with simple jumping and hammers, Mario and Luigi will work together to make their attacks stronger. And it's definitely a spectacle to behold because they're basically showing off their acrobatic skills. As Mario jumps on the enemy while Luigi flings him up like a volleyball and slams down for the final blow. While the green man is able to do what? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, so this is another controversial talking point in Brothership, is that when you use the attacks for Luigi, you use the A button instead of the B button like in previous games. Which doesn't really sound like a lot, but considering the fact that we had these games for like 20 years now and it's always been the same, this really threw off my muscle memory for me, and it actually made me slip up occasionally. I eventually did get used to it, and I honestly think personally this is not really a big hurdle for this game. It's more so you're just asking why instead of just a big detriment. But eventually once you get used to it, it just really clicks with you. The jumping, the hammers, and the dodge or two, everything in this game feels so natural. All the enemies in this game picks up a really good challenge, and I really gotta mention, I think my favorite enemy bunch in this game is, ironically, Bowser's minions. Mostly because since they're enemies you fight later on in the game, they go way more creative on how they attack you. Like the Goombas being a lot more aggressive when they all charge at you at once. The Magic Koopa takes advantage of these magical blocks to spawn on enemies, so you have to defeat them as fast as you can. And I can't believe they did this, but they did a full-on Mario Party reference with Shy Guy, as his main attacks is basically you playing through Shy Guy Says. And as for the trademark bro attacks, I love the fact how a lot of them takes full advantage of this game being full-on 3D. And I got really excited when they pulled out the jump helmet, because this is one of my favorite moves back in Bowser's Inside Story. But I think my favorite bro attack is probably Hatch Me If You Can, as the brothers use this Yoshi egg as a volleyball, and once you do the slam dunk, Yoshi will come out of the egg and do one big ground pound move, and yes, I abused the hell out of this move. But of course, since this is a modern Mario and Luigi game, they add one brand new battle gimmick to pretty much spice things up. With Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team it was the badges, and with Paper Jam it was the battle cards. But now, jumping all the way to the Nintendo Switch, we have the battle plugs, which is a very versatile mechanic in this game, as you can customize your moveset in any way you want. Like when Mario and Luigi does a regular attack, it'll cause a small little shockwave. There's a plugin where if you use it, you are able to automatically heal yourself and still use a turn. And there's even one that gives you Paper Mario's Flare Jump to make dodging easier. And what I like is that the plugins here are very well balanced, as some of these plugins you can only use like only a couple of times, and once they run out of juice, they have to charge up for a while. This is good because it makes you aware not to get too comfortable with your main plugin setup, and it allows you to strategize with plugins you might not have thought of before, especially when you go up to the various bosses. With all of them being well made, and I really love trying to figure out how to dodge them all. Especially with this weird giant barrel who rolls super fast. But I think the best part of these bosses is that they were able to implement Luigi logic in a very fun way. As while you're doing the battle, the boss will interact with something in the background, which Luigi will take advantage of. Like for example, during the Mega Snapter boss fight, Luigi will mess around with the water pumps, as you try to fix the pipe so the water can pump out and stun the enemy. Or during the Sharpcast boss fight, Luigi will literally play around with the conveyor belts, as you need to position the boss underneath these giant metal crates so he can eventually cave in on him. And every time you do this, it will weaken the enemy and stun them, and so your bro attacks will deal way more damage than usual. And it feels so satisfying when you do it successfully. Especially since when they go down, they really go down in a spectacle way. Which leads to the presentation in this game. For a very late Nintendo Switch title, Mario & Luigi Brothership looks so goddamn beautiful. Like, keep in mind, for the entirety of the Mario & Luigi series, it was mostly stuck on the handheld device. And while games like Dream Team and Paper Jam does have very appealing 3D graphics, it's just very surreal seeing a full-on home console Mario & Luigi game. The original art style for the series translated beautifully in HD. I like the subtle details of the brothers' eyebrows being in front of their caps, as well as how insanely well animated the characters are in this game. And the soundtrack in this game is also a blast to go through. It is honestly very different compared to the other Mario & Luigi games, as Brothership has a much more tropical, jazzy feel to it, which is very fitting considering the fact that you're traveling across the ocean in this game. And while we're talking about the sound quality, I have to give huge props to Kevin Afghani in this game, as his performance as brothers in this game is really well done. I really think he does really well with Luigi especially, because he really nails his much more timid younger brother personality. And while you explore through the game, you can also treat yourself with so many references from past Mario and Luigi games, as they call back to all the previous games in very weird and interesting ways. Like how you're able to find some reef statues of characters from last games, or even subtle minigames calling back to stuff from the past, like this one where you're trying to hit these walnuts on the flowers in a rhythmic way, which is really cool callback to the armpit minigame from Bowser's Inside Story. And while the fire flower isn't a bro attack this time around, you still play a minigame that is similar to doing the fire attack, as you need to make this pizza as fast as you can, and it works exactly the same. And I really had a stupid grin when Luigi was hiding in the barrel similar to Superstar Saga. And they even call back to a section in Paper Jam where the Mario Brothers gets locked up in Bowser's jail, and you need to figure out a way to escape the prison. They even reference Paper Mario in this section, with Snotlet asking the brothers if they can turn into pieces of paper. And I think the callback that really got me is this section where Charlotte decides to take Bowser a little visit, and he actually calls her by her nickname Chippy, which really got it to me because this was the first time I actually heard that name in a really long time. Okay, so this is going to be the part of the video I'm going to be talking about major spoilers for this game. So I'm going to be talking about more about the biggest twists and turns about this game, as the ones I talk about, like the minor spoilers, were mostly minute stuff. So if you don't want to get spoiled, skip to this timestamp right here, where it will go straight into my conclusions. I'll give you a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Alright, so after Mario and Luigi was able to find Bowser in a secret castle of his, the Extension Corp then kidnaps Bowser Jr. with Bowser going after them, which all leads to Lord Zocket's fortress, and once they go all the way up top of the building, Zocket then infects Bowser with the Glom, with the Mario Brothers being able to defeat him, but he had one final trick up his sleeve as he fires a massive laser across the entirety of the rooftop, with the brothers barely escaping with their lives. And so they're now washed up in the same place Mario was when he first woke up in Concordia, but now you can explore a different path that you weren't able to at the beginning. And the deeper the brothers explore through the island, they eventually were able to meet the guardian of Concordia called the Great Conductor, who reveals that he was the one who summoned the portals to bring Mario and Luigi to Concordia. And it's also revealed that Stoutlet was also his assistant this entire time, as the Conductor states that the Mario Brothers needs to help save Concordia because things are going to get a lot worse from here. And so after they were able to return back to the ship-shaped island, they then have to figure out a way to jump over the gate, which they were able to do so, as you were able to have a choice from either going underneath the sea or flying over it, which I honestly choose the flying over because I really wanted to see what it looked like. And also this game proves once more that Luigi is actually the ladies' man of the two. And after re-entering the fortress and finding off the Extension Corp for one last time, they were able to confront Lord Zocket once more. And this is when the big twist comes into play, where it turns out that Lord Zocket was actually just a possessed persona of Connie's former mentor, as it turns out that she was the puppet this entire time, as the real mastermind is this evil entity called Reclusa, who's this trans-dimensional being that destroyed multiple worlds in the past, who eventually lands in Concordia in this egg state so he can recharge, and once Kazoo discovered the egg, it turned her into Lord Zocket, with his first evil act being to destroy the Unit Tree. And I've gotta say, I really love Reclusa's design. His style and mannerisms is so different from any other Mario character we've seen before, as I always like a villain who is so chaotically unhinged, kind of like Jevil from Deltarune. And you really get the impression that he's super dangerous because he immediately turns Lord Zocket's fortress into his, as the entire place turns into this giant tree called a Solid Tree. And his big mastermind plan is to entrap everyone in Concordia into this virtual reality world, as he tries to entrap everyone into their imaginations where they'll be alone forever. Jesus Christ, that's even more twisted than Zocket's hate ray. And what's even worse is that after he's finished with Concordia, his next destination will be the Mushroom Kingdom. And so Mario and Luigi needs to figure out a way to get back to the Solid Tree. And the only way to do so is collect various people's bond energy, that way they can power up the brothers to break through the barrier. And after traveling across the entirety of Concordia one more time, they were finally able to gather enough bond energy so they can break through the barrier. And so it's time for the brothers to re-enter the Solid Tree. And man, this place is drastically different from once you first came in, because it's basically one final gauntlet of every single move you've learned so far. And this is not even talking about the second half of this area, which I've got to say is probably one of the most insane things I've ever seen from a Mario game. As the brothers try to climb up this giant building, they for some reason blacked out, and when they wake up, they for some reason arrive back at the Mushroom Kingdom, with Peach and Charlotte saying, "Congratulations, Mario and Luigi, you've saved the day once again." However, once they try to enter Peach's castle, they then arrive back outside. The brothers are very confused on this, but all everyone else can do is say, "Hey, let's play a game, let's play a game." This is when it turns out that the brothers landed in Reclusa's virtual reality world, and now they're stuck playing these minigames with their friends who aren't real. And the more you progress through this area, the more the entirety of this virtual Mushroom Kingdom falls apart, as they keep asking you, "Hey, let's play a game, let's play a game, and let's play a game, let's play a game, and let's play a game, let's play a game, let's play a game, let's play a game." The only way for them to escape this virtual prison is if they could find the real Reclusa, as they have to use Lakitu's camera similar to Mario 64 to figure out where the invisible paths are, with the evil entity getting more and more frustrated that they're fighting through the virtual reality. And eventually he just gives up and lets them go so he can just kill them. And so once they arrive once more on the rooftop, Reclusa has a full-on ambush as all of his minions try to attack the brothers. But luckily they were saved in just the time thanks to Bowser, who wants revenge on Lord Zocket for making a fool out of him. And so with no more running, it's time for the final battle, as this is a crazy multi-phase final boss. With the first section, you're pretty much fighting Reclusa head-on, but then his second phase, he then emerges into the tree by becoming this giant evil monster. But you don't fight the tree head-on, as you have to fight these flower minions, while the tree in the background tries to attack the brothers. And I really love this phase. I really love how much they really make this final boss feel so big. Like you're literally fighting a giant in this area. And then when we head to the final phase, we then enter inside of the solid tree, as Reclusa's true final boss is super chaotic, super unhinged, like he really wants to kill these plumbers. This is definitely a great way for this game to go out on, as once his health goes all the way down, it's time for the brothers to do one final blow. As after a few swings here and there, Reclusa has finally been defeated, with the evil entity fading away from existence, and all of the flowers he infested across Concordia has ceased to exist, freeing all the people from the evil's virtual reality machines. However, since Concordia has been saved, it's time for everyone in the Mushroom Kingdom to return back to home, as the brothers say one final goodbye to all of their friends. With the one that actually did get me is probably the one with Bowser Jr. saying goodbye to Buddy. They were such wholesome friends in this game. But when all is said and done, the Great Conductor then opens the portal back to the Mushroom Kingdom. And with the entirety of Concordia back to where it once was, Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Bowser returns back home. And with all the Concordians finally at peace at last, everything has finally returned back to normal. Ending things off with Bowser then attacking the Mushroom Kingdom once more, concluding Mario and Luigi Brothership. And final verdict? This game is such a really good time. After so many years of Mario and Luigi in this limbo state, it is so great to see this series back again. Now, I can't say that this might be my favorite Mario and Luigi game since it's still very new, so recency bias and all. But if I can scale them between all the games, I'd say I like it more than Superstar Saga, Partners in Time, and Paper Jam. But I think I would prefer Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team a bit more. So I think it's safe to say this game is on my top 3 list. And I definitely think Brothership is going to be a cult classic for years to come. Especially with the many, and I mean many characters this game introduced. Like, I didn't even scratch the surface with some of these characters. And I really think you should really try out this game. And it's just so nice that after so many years, we finally have a true, proper, turn-based Mario RPG game again. Like, the remakes of Super Mario RPG and Thousand Year Door were really nice, but I was very curious on what they could do with an original game, and Brothership answers that question. Acquire did a fantastic job reviving this series. Were there a few growing pains with this game? Sure they were, but overall, I felt like Mario & Luigi Brothership was definitely a big win for this series. And before we end this video, I would like to say a massive thank you to everyone who supported me during my entire Mario & Luigi marathon, as I had one hell of a time going through every single game in this series. From the very highs to the very lows, it was definitely a very interesting time, as this series was basically my RPG childhood, as I played through most of the games for most of my life. And whatever Mario RPG comes next, I am definitely going to be playing through it. As proof with the Mario RPG remakes and Mario & Luigi Brothership, Nintendo is finally taking the Mario RPG side seriously once again. And I cannot wait to see what they are going to be doing in the future. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!